Where are these wires? Is that cramped? I know. No, it's just me as well. Good afternoon. Where's your? Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, and Happy New Year as well. Thank you. Item 1, announcement by the Mayor and Chief Exec to announce the death of former Councillor and Mayor Barbara Allenby, who passed away at the end of December, aged 93. Miss Allenby has represented the Lindley ward and served as the Mayor of Kirklees from 2003 to 2004. I'll now pass it on to people who will make comments. Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had the privilege of knowing and working with Barbara Allenby for many years. Barbara attended Royds Hall Grammar School and University of Manchester. Barbara also was a teacher of art at Huddersfield New College for 16 years. Barbara was elected as a councillor for the Lindley ward in 1994 and served on Huddersfield Pines Subcommittee and Appeals Panels, the Council Business Committee, the Historic Buildings Trust and the Yorkshire Museums Council. Barbara served as Mayor from 2003 to 2004. Barbara was a dedicated and committed ward councillor for Lindley. She made a positive contribution to Lindley ward, to Kirklees and to all of the different people that she worked with and changed many lives for the good. She will be sadly missed, and I would like to offer condolences to her family at this time.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Councillor Andrew Pinnock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to associate myself with those remarks. I had the pleasure of working with Councillor Allenby, and although I can't necessarily answer for her effect on Lindley ward, I can say that she was a loyal member of the group. She contributed very well to our discussions, and she had a particular interest in the historic environment, which I suppose is accounted for by her background as an art teacher. So, as chair of the Kirklees Historic Buildings Trust, I appreciated the sort of interest and feelings that she brought to that role, and I was very sorry to hear of her death, and as Councillor Burke has said, I offer my condolences to her family. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. Councillor Donald Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I knew Barbara quite well. I was on the council in those. It's 2003 to 2004. Found her to be a nice lady, easy to get on with, and she made a very good mayor. And I do believe that she was interested in antiques, if I remember rightly. But from that point of view, she was, I can only speak highly of her. There was a little bit of a problem at the time when she was mayor at her civic dinner, but we'll not go into that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Firth. Councillor Pando.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I was elected in 2002, and I knew Barbara for a couple of years, especially when she was the mayor. And she was a nice lady, and she was one of these people that actually was very considerate and very thoughtful in her approach. So on behalf of my group, the Labour group, I'd like to pass on my sincere condolences and sympathy to the family. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Pando. Councillor Martin Bolt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'd like to be associated with the condolences. Barbara was someone I worked with when I first got on council in the days when we had a road safety committee. I think under the chairmanship of Peter Sykes, which was always interesting. got to know Barbara and Roy very well, her husband. Roy was a former policeman and obviously had his views on things. I remember on road safety, we were bringing in the early iterations of the speed awareness course. And Barbara at one time said to the head of highways and head of road safety that she thought the speed awareness courses were a bit of an easy opt-out. Why weren't these people being taken to the full extent of the law? So she was offered the opportunity to go sit in on a speed awareness course and see how these things worked. The feedback we got was there was this nice old lady that was sitting at the back of the room who all the way through was telling people that she hadn't been caught for speeding, she was just sitting there watching. So whilst I'm sure she understood what was happening, I don't think she got the full flavour of it, but I'm sure Barbara was a great servant of the people and I'm sure will be sadly missed, but particularly by her family, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bolt. Anyone? Okay, thank you for that. Just something I forgot to mention, there will be a break approximately at 7 o'clock. Thank you. Is there any apologies? Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We have apologies from Councillor Taylor and Councillor Lisa Holmes. We also have a number of members that are making their way here. Councillor Smith, Councillor Smade and Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Marchington.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll give apologies for Councillor Kath Pinnock and Councillor Alison Munro.
Thank you. Councillor Sokol.
Mr Mayor, apology from Councillor Fran Perry, Councillor Sarwa, I think Councillor Park, but coming a bit late. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sokol. Councillor Richards.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Apologies from Councillor Karen Allison. She's not able to be here this evening.
Thank you. Well, okay.
I'd like to move that the minutes of the meeting of Council held on the 7th of December 2022 be approved as a correct record. Is that seconded? Thank you.
Thank you. Declaration of interest. Sorry.
Can we vote by a show of hands, please? Carrie, thank you. Back to you.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. Members of any disclosable pecuniary interest which would prevent them from discussing or voting on any item should disclose their interest now. Are there any interest to declare? Okay. Can I remind members, if there is any interest, please complete the form and submit to the clerk at the end of the meeting. Thank you. Item 5, petitions from members of the council. Are there any petitions? No. Okay. Item 6, deputations, petitions from members of the public. We have 5 deputations this evening. First, can I please invite Save Our Corn Valley Swimming Pool to come forward and present their deputation. Thank you for attending the meeting. Do you want to just tell us your name and then?
Councillors, my name is Nicholas Hill and I live in Slathwaite, and I wish to speak regarding the closure of Colne Valley Leisure Centre swimming pool. My health and well-being depend on doing exercise, and as a disabled person, there aren't many things I can do independently. Swimming was one of them, but it's not anymore. Before the closure, I could get to the swimming pool in my wheelchair and went down twice a week. I now face many problems and require assistance to be there with me. I was able to travel to Slathwaite without using my car. Having to drive means I incur fuel costs. Lifting my wheelchair in and out of my car, I cannot do this. In Slathwaite, the locker for the clothing is in the changing room, and at the leisure centre in Huddersfield, I have to transport my clothing from an allocated disabled changing area to a locker in the general swimming area of the. You try doing this, hanging onto all your clothing and down to a locker when you are trying to steer a wheelchair. In Slathwaite, finding a locker I can reach when I get to the lockers is not always available in Huddersfield. In Slathwaite, I was guaranteed a locker which I could get my clothes into. Exercise is important for all people, especially disabled, and swimming is the only exercise I can do, and I've had to miss swimming in the past 2 weeks due to my husband being unwell. No help, no swim, and there is nothing worse than losing your independence, because when your independence goes, your confidence follows it.
Thank you, Nicola.
Can you hear me okay? My name is Victoria Minton. I'm also a resident of Slough. I'm going to speak on behalf of two groups. My own group of people, a huge tranche of older people who increasingly are needing the facilities to go to aqua aerobics, aquafit, aquamed. People with heart conditions like me, people with arthritic knees, people who've had knee and hip operations are absolutely dependent on that facility. We're so grateful that we've had it for so long, but this is a really vital thing. And the other group, who unfortunately aren't here, for reasons why I hope that they're doing their homework or having a snack, is that the children who are absolutely dependent on this, access to that pool throughout the valley, as one young person mentioned to us at the public meeting that we had. He was 9 years old, I think, and said, we live in a place of water. We have canals, we have rivers, it's absolutely, we have mill races. It's absolutely crucial that young people should be able to learn to swim in that pool, as have most of the generations who've been in the Colne Valley. And these schools do not have the space in the curriculum to bus kids out miles away into Huddersfield or into Spen or into Kirklees Sports Centre. It just isn't going to work. Neither do they have the budgets for the buses that would cost. So it's we're talking about a whole population here that are in jeopardy with their health needs because of this closure. There are reasons we know, and we'll get to those about why it's happened, but I just wanted to make that case for the people who are the users.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name's John Smith. I'm a resident of Colne Valley as well. Again, I'm going to speak briefly for older people. My brother and I both have had medical problems. I had a cardiac event and he had pancreatitis. Both these conditions resulted in reduced fitness and stamina, and the regular swimming that we've been doing at Colne Valley has greatly improved that. In fact, my brother, who was knocked back more than I was, is now faster and does more distance than I do, and his condition was much worse than mine. Mine was very minor in comparison. The other thing I'd like to say is this: the pool was originally funded by through fundraising in the Colne Valley by the residents of Colne Valley, which tells you that the people of Colne Valley, they want their pool, which they fundraised for, to continue to be open, and we don't want it to be closed either temporarily or permanently. So please keep it open. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Maurice Rhodes, and I am a CAL member, and I use the pool at Slathwaite 3 or 4 times a week. Now, I want to talk about money, the finances. Now, the Colne Valley Leisure Centre is part of CAL, and if CAL is not viable financially, then obviously Colne Valley Swimming Pool is not viable. Now, in the financial year ending in 2021, that would be 2020-2021, CAL was in deficit by £5 million. Now, that is expenditure less income. Now, we're coming to another end of financial year, 2022, and I bet my bottom dollar that that deficit will have increased. We don't know because we don't have the figures. Now, CAL needs to do something about this. The only way that it can continue without more and more debt accruing is simply to have a bailout of at least £5 million from KMC, and in addition to that, it would need to put up its fees, what it charges to subscribers, people at the desk, and so on, by at least 20%. I say 20%. And that would be okay for probably another 2 years, and then it would need to be reviewed again.
Mr. Morris, your 5 minutes are over for the deputation, so I'm afraid the other speakers who are going to speak won't be able to speak, so I'm going to get the cabinet member for that area to speak about it. Councillor Paul Davies.
Okay. Thanks for coming this evening. I recognise a few faces, certainly from the meeting I attended in Slough on the same issue. And I'm really sorry to hear, particularly about the experiences that your friends had in Huddersfield, and it's something we can look at and pick that up in terms of that user experience as well. And absolutely can assure you, your voices, as you can tell tonight, are being heard. Each of the sites affected by CAL's decision plays an important role in their community, and this has been very clear from the reaction that we've had over the last few weeks, and obviously from the deputation from yourselves. And we have another deputation after you from Deaton, so I'm sure we'll hear a very similar story. The temporary closure of the 3 sites is an operational decision, as you know, by CAL. And you obviously, as you've just explained, very aware of CAL as an organisation and some of the pressures it faces. It is a charitable organisation and separate from the council. I can't speak on behalf of CAL, but I absolutely know they didn't make this decision easily or quickly, and they looked through a whole range of series of cost-cutting exercises that they could put in place, but unfortunately they came to the conclusion they have to have these temporary closures during this financial year. None of that makes this decision any easier or any better for you as users and for the communities. And we absolutely understand that. And none of us want to see any of the sites closed. But it's important to recognise the circumstances, and I'm grateful for some of the insight that you've already provided to us in terms of CAL's financial position. CAL has faced extraordinary challenges, particularly during the pandemic. Like many other businesses, they're not alone, and certainly like all other leisure facilities across the country. And the spiralling energy costs couldn't have come at a worse time, and clearly, particularly for swimming pools, energy costs are huge and have a real impact on the viability of that particular business. We've recognised this over the last 4 years. So when you talk about deficits, we as a council, as an administration, we've provided around 11 million in the last 4 years, in addition to the co-funding that we provided to the council. I think you're probably aware of that already. It's also important to understand, and again, I'm sure you know this, but it's important to understand that Carl is not on his own. This is an issue we're facing right across the country at the moment. It means that Carl, unfortunately, is not going to be the first organisation and won't be the last organisation to take these sorts of actions. And that's why, you know, from my perspective, and certainly from the council perspective, we urgently need government as well to revisit their approach in terms of energy-intensive operators like swimming pools. In its energy support package that they do provide, the government, to businesses, unfortunately, those organisations are excluded. And from recent information, in fact, information I saw yesterday, it would appear the government have no plans to include leisure centres within that support going forward. That is a huge problem for the whole sector. The LGA, the Local Government Association, are lobbying, I'm sure, and hopefully MPs are lobbying government as well to see if they can be included within that package. That would be of huge assistance and certainly give an element of certainty in terms of prices and budgeting, therefore, for Carl going forward. We as a council and as administration, certainly we will continue to engage with Carl as they review their financial situation over the coming weeks. And I can absolutely assure you that the issues you've raised will be part of that discussion. And you won't be surprised to know that they've already been part of those discussions in the last few weeks. So I thank you again for coming, for your deputation, but more importantly for representing your communities. So really appreciate that. So thanks very much again.
Can I just thank you all for coming and presenting your deputations. Thank you ever so much. I'll just let her get out first. I'll just let them get in. Next, can I please invite Save Deaton Leisure Centre to come forward and present their deputation. Welcome to the meeting. You have 5 minutes to present your deputation to the council. Thank you.
Everybody, my name is Basil Richards. I coordinate the Deaton Intersports project, which obviously has operated outside of the Deaton Arena for 20 years. I'm obviously here on behalf of the community as well. We currently have around 300 young people that use our activities every week, starting from 5 years old. We run 11 junior football teams. Can
we have one conversation at a time, please? Thank you.
Is it all right to smooth? Yeah. Yeah, sorry. So, as I was saying, my name is Basil Richards. I run the Deaton Intersports project. I've run it for 20 years. Alongside the opening of the sports arena, I'm speaking on behalf of the Deaton community. We run football teams, netball, basketball teams, and also dance teams. If I just use our football teams in terms of the impact it's having on our community, we have 11 junior teams that operate in the Huddersfield Junior District League. We currently have 24 young players that are actually with professional academy teams that we've helped to develop over the years. A lot of my role models are actually people that have actually made bad decisions in their lives in the past, and even been in trouble with the authorities and changed their lives around. We've actually put them through Sport England coaching qualifications, and they've been perfect role models in telling the young people not to do certain things in terms of antisocial behaviour, because this and that will happen, and they've done that through experience. It has had a massive impact on the community so far. We're homeless. And as I say, with the junior football team, we've got 285 young people from 5 years old that are part of our football club. It's devastating. I've had parents in tears on the phone. I've had kids on the phone in tears. It's a devastating impact for us. We really need the arena to reopen. because of the previous issues that we've had in Deaton and what I feel in the future are going to be issues. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you. I'm here to speak on behalf of the campaign group and a member of Deaton as well and one of the users. And as Basil has said, this does have a massive impact. I'm a PE teacher by trade, and I can tell you that when it comes to organising fixtures and running clubs, you cannot just find a new venue. You can't just cancel your fixtures. And this is what has had to happen due to this closure. And it's forced us to have to bring a campaign together, bring the community together and campaign against this, because the strength of feeling is there. We've had so much over the years taken away from us, and the children really need this, as do the adults. We've had the impact of COVID, with COVID shutting all the leisure centres and taking sports away. When you are stressed, you turn to sports, you go for a walk. That is really important part of mental health. We've had the recent death of one of our young people in our area by a murder. We've had stabbings in that area. And if you take this centre away, that crime is going to increase because our children are not being shown and given an alternative pathway. It is vital that this happens, and why we have started a legal proceedings as well. We've had a meeting with a solicitor. We are in the process of looking at a judicial review, and we need the council support. We want to know what equality impact assessment was taken by the council when it decided to not fund CAL in order to keep the centres open. When did this happen? Where did this consultation take place? We are aware that the Norton Thorpe School, St Joseph Norton School, is being relocated to Deaton. A consultation was taking place in Sisset. There was no consultation that took place in Deaton. Yeah, although that was advertised that did happen, that did not happen. Is there an ulterior motive as to why Deaton is closing? Deaton is closing, it closed, there was no consultation about that, the user groups was not made aware of that, and we feel that this is a permanent decision and it is due to alternative motives, and we want answers. We want answers, we want open, honest discussions about this.
Good evening, everybody. I'll make mine nice and quick. My name is Eugene Andrews. I'm the head basketball coach for the Deaton in Sports Project. I run the basketball teams at the Deaton Project. I've been there for over 20 years. When the centre first started, I started off as a coach. I then moved on to be a youth worker, and my career has progressed ever since. I've seen a lot of young people come through those doors. A lot of young people that a lot of professionals, parents, didn't know how to help, didn't know how to reach, change their lives. Some gone to professions such as architects, university students, and an array of things to be a positive impact on the community and on their lives. Now, what I've experienced is that they're closing the centre down without any consultation, any sort of impact, any sort of assessment of impact on the young people's lives in the area. Now, I've got a question to ask yourselves. If it's your grandchildren, if it's your children, and this was your centre, your heartbeat, your centre that you grew up in, grew around, how would you feel? What would you do? And what action would you take to keep that centre open? Thank you.
Apologies, but if we have still got time, I do feel we should be having discussions about bringing the leisure centres back in-house and back under the council control as well. Thank you.
Thank you. You just managed to get in. I am Councillor Paul Davies to respond, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. And thanks again. As you know, we've just had a previous deputation as well in terms of Combe Valley. Absolutely fantastic to hear the work that you're doing, and I understand, the great passion that you have for that work and your concerns within the community. And as I've said to the previous group, certainly we are listening to that, and your voices are being heard. We've had a lot of feedback, as you can imagine, in the last few weeks. So there are 3 sites that are affected across CAL, and each of those absolutely play important roles within their communities, and I think you've very clearly articulated that this evening in terms of your community. The temporary closure of the 3 sites is an operational decision for Carl. They made that decision. As you know, they operate the services across Kirklees, and they're set up as a charitable organisation. I'm sure you know all this background. And certainly, although I can't speak on behalf of Carl, I know they didn't come to any of these decisions easily. The situation they find themselves in, because of the financial issues that they're facing, they clearly had to look at some elements of cost cutting. They went through a whole range of alternatives and options, but unfortunately, they came to the conclusion they had to have these 3 temporary closures put in place. Clearly, they're going to be reviewing those at the end, during this period, and also at the end of the financial year. None of this makes any difference for yourselves. I absolutely understand that. You know, the fact that the financial numbers, the decisions, the way they've had to go makes absolutely no difference on the impact in terms of the work you were doing and your community. And we absolutely understand that and accept that. But Carl do face extraordinary challenges. The pandemic, as you know, hit businesses hard, hit the leisure industry very hard. And then, of course, we've now got the energy costs, which have hit particularly the leisure industry even more, particularly swimming pools and even leisure centres in total. So it's really had a massive impact on the finances and Carl overall. We've worked closely with Carl because clearly it is a partnership in that regard. And over the last 4 years, to help Carl in order to meet some of their financial issues, we as administration have provided £11 million extra finance on top of their core grant. So that has been a commitment that we've shown. But I think you're probably aware, most people are aware, the Council is also facing financial challenges at this point and going forward as well. With the current situation, both for the Council and for Carl and the economy as it stands at the moment, clearly Carl is trying to look at a sustainable option going forward. Where they are at the moment is just not sustainable for them. This isn't specific just to Kirklees, it's nationwide. It means that Carl, unfortunately, is not going to be the first organisation to take this kind of action, and they definitely won't be the last. And that's why we are lobbying and making very clear that we need very urgently the government to include energy-intensive operators, so swimming pools, leisure centres, in its energy support package beyond March. They've been excluded from that help, the help that other businesses get. It's absolutely crucial that we can provide that support. The Local Government Association are lobbying, and also I'm absolutely certain there will be MPs lobbying the government for that as well. That confidence on energy prices is crucial for Carl going forward, so they can budget and they can plan accordingly, and they can look at their services and balance those services in the best way across Kirklees. We'll continue as a council and administration engaging with Carl as they review their finances over the coming weeks. We're doing that already. So we've very quickly got to feel that the community's concerns and the emotion and passion around these issues. So certainly we are working with Carl on that going forward. And I know that Carl are very keen to work with the groups as well, and we are encouraging them to work openly with each of the groups to see if there are solutions going forward. We will continue to do that, and I can assure you that your concerns, as with the previous group's concerns, will be raised in those discussions. So I'd like to thank you again for making your deputation. It's extremely impressive, the work you're doing. It's of huge value. And I'd like to thank you for the work you're doing within your community. And I'm certain that they will be very appreciative of the fact that you've come here this evening to represent them. Thank you.
Thank you for attending. Item 3. What's the point of order, Councillor Bolt?
On both of these deputations, that he's not able to speak for Cal. We are fortunate that the council has a spokesman for Cal. Surely, when people are responding, the members of the public should get the response from the representative of the organisation, not from the cabinet member. Well, that's why we have spokesman. Councillor Sokal is our nominated, or Cal's nominated spokesman. For what the cabinet member can't respond, surely we and the members of the public should hear from the representative of Kirklees Active Leisure.
Councillor Sokal, have you got any more to add?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, can I make it clear here? CAL is an independent charitable organization. Yeah. There are two places on the CAL board which are nominated by the council. Yeah. One is currently one is Councillor Mark Thompson and myself. Yeah. Although we are nominated by the council, not true. We must always act in the best interest of the charitable organization. Yeah, according to the charity law. Yeah, there are charities. There are some restrictions. Even we are representing the council on there, and not as a representative of the council, and so we are not allowed to share with the council any information presented to and discussed at the board meeting. If any member from the council or the public, they want any further information, they can contact the CAL directly. That's the situation. Two representatives on the council on there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sokal. Thank you for that. Thank you for the deputation. Thank you. Item 3. Can I please invite Nigel Rogers to come forward to present his deputation? You have to sit down. Any legs? Any legs?
His legs.
Can't feel my feet.
I can.
Thank you, mate.
My name is Nigel Rogers. Firstly, thank you for letting me time for this evening. I hope here to talk to you about the road traffic accidents happening outside my home on Bog Green Lane, Combe Bridge. The road which connects Upper Heaton with Combe Bridge, the B6118. I know many of you are aware of this issue already, and I'm grateful for the steps already taken, but I would like to press this matter of urgency given the increasing number of accidents. To summarise, what has happened with vehicles coming both up and down the road and losing control and hitting either the telegraph pole or the land surrounding my property. This has caused substantial damage to my wall and garden, which now restricts access for my front door, as well as damage to the public footpath. Incidents began in September when vehicle hit the telegraph pole opposite my house. They have increased in frequency, one with the most recent incident saw a pickup come to the standstill on top of my garden wall. Thankfully, I was away from the property at the time and my dogs were secure inside. There have been 10 incidents in 13 weeks. which we now know of 6 which have happened in the last 5. A recent Facebook post my son published on the local page has seen comments suggesting that people are losing control on the corner but not resulting on hitting anything, which I am thankful for, but believe this is simple down to luck. Police have attended the incidents, which I understand will result in investigations. This will take months to complete. With the increased number of collisions, I am worried that will result in casualties soon. I am asking the Council to take steps to make the road safer as a matter of urgency and keep my family and property safe. I have now been left with no barrier between the road and my front door, as the stone wall, hedge and gates have been destroyed. My 2 dogs, who I previously enjoyed running from the garden to the house in safety, I can no longer allow. This must be what I must watch them from the patio area. I am waiting for a knee operation after recently having a hip replacement following delays due to the pandemic. This means my mobility isn't what it was and I cannot move quickly as I once did. I am worried that I will not be able to move in time if a vehicle is heading for the garden, or worse, if the vehicle hits my property. I moved to the property in 2004, and in all the time I have not experienced accidents like this. I believe the accidents are likely linked to the road surface, which was replaced from a grip which was replaced from the grip was once laid there and maintained. I appreciate the steps taken by the Council to put slow signs and skid signs in place. This may have helped 1 or 2 drivers be more aware of their driving in the area. However, accidents still occur, these signs being put out. I like to extend my gratitude to Muscan for the help and input in this matter so far. I have images with me so you can see the damage for yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll invite Cabinet Member Councillor Mothers to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers, for coming today with this deputation. As a councillor and Cabinet Member, Councillor for Dalton and Cabinet Member for Environment, which includes highways, we are aware, and I am anxious to ensure the safety of both the pedestrians, residents and those driving through. And as far as I am aware, the Council Highways Department or team are aware that there has been several incidents that you've mentioned already on this stretch of the road. They are losing control as they move southwards. So a series of assessments of the existing road surface are being taken to determine if any action is necessary to improve the grip level that you've just mentioned. And thank you for acknowledging the fact that we've put on the new signage. So in response, we are doing all that is possible and considering all the options. And my advice to road users is to be cautious, take caution, reduce speed and drive to the conditions, especially during winter period whilst travelling along Bog Lane, because that's what we require, because you've lived there long enough and you know that it didn't happen before. Additional signage, as you have alluded to, has been installed to warn drivers of the risk of slippery surfaces. So we need people to behave, we need drivers to behave better rather than risk other people's lives and stock and property. And we are continuing to monitor the existing situation, and if necessary, we will introduce further temporary measures to reduce the short-term risk of more incidents taking place. So rest assured, it's in hand, it's my ward, it's highways will always try and put residents and road safety at the heart of everything we do. So, the situation will be dealt with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mathers, and thank you, Mr. Rogers, for attending this evening. Thank you. So, next, can I please invite Huddersfield Friends of the Earth to come forward and present their deputation, please. After it's just gone. I can't read note. No, it's freezing.
Turn the mic off.
Welcome to the meeting. You have 5 minutes to present.
Good evening all. We welcome the publication of the Kirklees Climate Change Action Plan that was agreed in December 2022 and are broadly supportive of the 206 potential measures being put forward. We also welcome the plan's outlining of the many economic, social and health benefits associated with reducing carbon emissions, such as improved energy security, reduction of fuel poverty and an improved and efficient public transport network. However, like other stakeholders, we have a number of challenges to put forward. We challenge the speed with which the Council is developing these plans. Whilst we are pleased with some of the content of the Climate Action Plan, it currently stands as a wish list of uncosted actions without a clear timetable for implementation or measurable outcomes. As a member of the Kirklees Climate Commission, it was clear that the minimal amount of consultation we had was of a perfunctory level. Echoing comments made in December by Councillor Cooper and the deputation presented by Clem Bacon, there seems to be a lack of urgency and leadership demonstrated by the slow pace of delivery. It'll be a full 5 years from declaring an emergency to when the action plan is fully implemented. Can we imagine if the Council had responded at the same speed to the COVID pandemic and produced a document outlining its wish list of action 4 years after the emergency was declared? Climate collapse is a crisis even more of a devastating global scale than the pandemic and threatens the stability of civilization and the futures of our young people. Last year, this was exemplified in the flooding which covered 1/3 of Pakistan, as well as numerous extreme weather events and record temperatures we are seeing across the globe.
It is our role as Huddersfield Friends. It's our role as Huddersfield Friends of the Earth to work with the Council on its climate goals, and we'll endeavour to hold you accountable on these targets. The Climate Emergency Scorecards developed by Climate Emergency UK are another way of tracking how well Kirklees is doing compared with other councils that have declared a climate emergency. In 2021, Kirklees scored 0 because it did not have a plan. By contrast, Leeds Council scored 71%. Let's hope that Kirklees will do significantly better than this year when the councils will be reassessed.
We have a few concrete asks and suggestions to how Kirklees can demonstrate greater urgency and leadership in its approach. We're calling for annual targets and reviews. The Climate Emergency UK scorecard criteria includes a question: has the Council published a climate action plan with SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant and time-bound targets? We know that this isn't currently the case for Kirklees, but it is promised. This is something we should be doing immediately. Kirklees Climate Change Action Plan, as it stands, is calling for reviews every 3 years. Surely, given all the time they've had, annual reviews should be better reflected. Secondly, we're calling on the Council to urgently review any road expansion schemes currently in the pipeline. We strongly feel the local plan needs updating. We're asking for greater speed in delivering the plan and that Kirklees does not wait until 2024 to start the actions listed in its Climate Change Action Plan. Examples could be in motion today on renewable energy, taking more action locally to retrofitting our homes during the current energy bill crisis. Do we need to wait for another public consultation to know that these are the sort of actions we need to take place to address the climate emergency? The UN Secretary General described at COP27 the world has been on the highway to climate hell with our foot on the accelerator. The pace of delivery of the Climate Change Action Plan urgently needs to ramp up in its response.
I thought the other lady was going to speak as well, but thank you. Can I invite Councillor Simpson to respond, please?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much to each of you for joining us at the meeting today and for your deputation regarding the Climate Change Action Plan, which was approved by Cabinet and Council late last year and was made possible through the valuable contributions made by residents, businesses, partners, leading climate researchers and stakeholders such as yourselves. So thank you very much to each of you and to everyone who's engaged with us. I know that the representatives of Friends of the Earth were engaged during the development of the Climate Change Action Plan through our Climate Change Action Plan survey, and I'm also aware that some Friends of the Earth members had additional opportunities to express their contributions and the contributions of Friends of the Earth through the numerous dedicated Kirklees Climate Commission workshops and engagement sessions which they were invited to participate in. Throughout the development of the Climate Change Action Plan, the Council has consistently worked hard to deliver an ambitious programme of activity which contributes to addressing carbon emissions and vulnerability to climate change. Our first round of climate emergency action started immediately back in 2019 through our Phase 1 actions, and we in fact went beyond those, and action remained ongoing during the development of the comprehensive action plan, and indeed the action plan does outline actions that are still ongoing and we are taking now, as well as the actions that we're going to be taking forwards and prioritising. In fact, our ambition has evolved over the past 2 years and is no longer just net zero by 2038, but to be net zero and climate ready by 2038. And we continue to develop with our new focus on the environmental sustainability strategy as well. Evolving to incorporate climate adaptation as well as mitigation into our Climate Change Action Plan goes further than most local authorities, but we recognise the need to continue moving forward and to continue to rise to the challenge and be a leader, achieving positive climate action with the support of our local partner organisations, businesses and residents, in addition to the help and support of national government and regional partners. This action plan is the next step in our journey, laying out the long list of actions that can be taken to help reduce emissions and increase resilience within Kirklees. Through stakeholder engagement, we plan to ask residents, organisations, partners and businesses to prioritise these actions to ensure they best reflect our communities and places and to avoid being technocratic. Through prioritisation, we'll delve into more detail on the potential carbon reduction and costs of each of these, and at this point we'll come forward with a firm commitment of the delivery that will be made in the initial phase. We know the cost of not taking action is far greater than the cost of taking action now. We want to make sure that the action we take is the most cost effective and has the biggest possible benefit in terms of reducing carbon and increasing our resilience, as well as generating numerous health and wellbeing co-benefits for our residents. But we recognise that we're in an era where funding is likely to remain constrained. That's why we're going to be proactive when it comes to having prioritised business cases ready to deliver for every funding opportunity, and we'll do that through version 2 of the action plan. We'll also continue to pursue external funding opportunities to deliver as much as we possibly can within Kirklees. The plan satisfies the Council's annual reporting commitments to the CDP, the Carbon Disclosure Project scheme, and the Global Covenant of Mayors, and these are both schemes we've chosen to participate in voluntarily in order to align with best practice. It also aligns with the guidance and criteria set out in the National Climate Emergency Scorecard campaign. Incidentally, the efforts of our officers in this regard has been reflected in our 2022 CDP score, which was released in mid-November, achieving us a B, improving on the C from last year, which puts us ahead of the regional and national average. As Kirklees embarks on its next steps in the climate action journey, it's also important to recognise that our commitment isn't just for the Council, It's a district net zero target and a district climate ready target, and that goes beyond just Kirklees Council alone to achieve. You mentioned in your deputation a lack of targets in the plan. However, that's not the case. We recognise the importance of monitoring progress against the action within the action plan, and we've therefore built into the plan a comprehensive monitoring and evaluation strategy, establishing a 3-yearly cycle of monitoring, evaluation and reporting all the way through to 2038. This is in line with best practice through the Carbon Disclosure Project 2022 Cities Reporting Guidance. Whilst the action outlines a comprehensive climate change mitigation and adaptation response across the district, it also supports the Council's clean and green agenda alongside other Council plans and strategies, which are measurable objectives for the Council to work towards. You also mentioned targets and smart targets. These are classified in the Climate Change Action Plan in terms of the smart targets specific. They're well defined, clear and unambiguous, setting out a science-based percentage emission reduction against the baseline from 2000 to achieve net zero for Kirklees. Measurable. The carbon emission reductions target are measurable by analysing the current emissions of the area of Kirklees against the 2000 baseline using CO2 equivalent data. And so far we've achieved a 39% reduction against that 2000 baseline as laid out within the net zero assessment report. Achievable. The emission reduction targets outlined are attainable. They're science-based, determined in relation to our carbon budget, which was set out by the Tyndall Centre and are being informed by the emission reduction options that are cost-effective, cost-neutral or have technical potential. They're realistic because the targets are outlined within reach if the emission reduction options outlined.
Councillor Simpson.
I could go on forever, Mr Mayor. I could go on. If you'd like to come back with any further questions.
Have you got? How long have you got? Not a couple of pages.
No, I will just say that I really do hope that you'll continue to engage with us, because this is, of course, going to be an ongoing process. I know that there will often be disagreements, and that's the nature of the political process, but we do want to work together because I am as passionate about this issue as you are, and this council is going to do everything it can to make sure that we deliver on the ambitious targets that we've made. So please do continue to engage.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. Thank you for coming as well. Next, can I please invite Margaret Coates to come forward and present her deputation, please.
What's Margaret talking about?
Welcome to the meeting, Margaret. You have 5 minutes to present your deputation to the council.
I'm Margaret Coates.
Sorry, Margaret Coates. Thank you.
My main concern is why has the social housing flats been allowed to become so dilapidated and in a state of disrepair? That's my starting point. My other one is I've been trying to get in touch with several people, Cathy Scott included, over a long period of time, talking months here. We have plenty of problems. I've had rats in my property, in my kitchen, living in my kitchen, as is the flat next door. It was confirmed as rats being in at the beginning of September. Nothing was done. There's a loft below a hole in the gable end of the roof in another flat, which is full of bird droppings and dead birds because they were getting in. That's not being cleaned out. And there's a lady underneath that hole who is 16 weeks pregnant. And I think that's a lot of toxins, you know, over above where she lives. Rotting window frames on the landing. They've been looked at, but no action taken, just waiting for the window panes to fall out. Work has started at the back of the flats, excavation, a massive job, and these rat holes around the back I first reported approximately 7 years ago, umpteen times since, so 7 years of deterioration. You did finally get back to me. I rang you on the 2nd of December. You spoke to me. finally. Told you all about the estate problems, which you denied any knowledge of.
Margaret, can you speak to the deputation, and I'll invite the cabinet member to speak once you've finished talking about it. Thank you.
I spoke to several cabinet staff. Did they not inform you of any of my grievances? As the portfolio holder, you should have been and need to be fully aware of estate issues within your department. The issues being all those that I've just read. And on the 8th of January, when you visited my flat, you still denied knowledge of these issues prior to this.
Thank you, Margaret. I'll invite the Cabinet Member, Councillor Scott, to respond to a number of issues that you've raised.
Good evening, Mrs Coates. Nice to see you again. And quite rightly, yes, I did visit you on the 8th of January. And I'll just go through the summary. This came to my attention on the 25th of November, which I asked officers to respond to you. And also I picked up an email chain where Councillor Hamilton, Vivian Lee Hamilton, had actually reported it on the, I think it was either the 12th or 13th. So I did the chain back. Before that, I wasn't aware. You've been ringing Cabinet Office, which is not acceptable. I do absolutely agree with what you're saying. It's not acceptable. But from the moment I found out about it, I have been onto it. Now, I have checked with housing. They have been aware of this situation and have assured me they've been in regular contact with you. Before my visit, the last contact with your housing officer and other services was on the 5th of January. Now, I attended the site on the 8th of January, and as I arrived, I noted that you showed me the holes round the back. It had been excavated. On the 6th of January, somebody had actually been. The only slippage in that for why they hadn't dug up was they were waiting on plant machinery to do it with. They didn't have any on site, which that doesn't reassure you. I understand that. But none of the holes could be filled in until they excavated, because they did actually find a collapsed sewer. And that's what they were saying. Your other things that you have mentioned, some slippage in work did happen because it happened during the COVID period. However, I have been assured that the roof was dealt with. It has been dealt with. You brought up other matters, which I can't discuss other people's properties, but our deputations are in touch. I've rung the people and they are happy that things are being actioned for them. I can only go with what I've said, I've been told. I've given you my number. I've said to you, I reassured you on Sunday, if you need me, I will come out and see you. Just ring me if there's still a problem. But you have estate managers. But can I just also, I think you need to be made aware, we are councillors. We do not dictate the operations within the council. Yes, I am the portfolio lead, but I can't make workmen drop what they're doing to do something else. I have every empathy with you. You discussed other elements with me, which housing officers said they would be in contact with you. So that's where I'm at with it. I think they need to be proactive more. I've got every empathy with you, and we can take it forward from there. But apart from that, the 25th of November was the first time I knew about this. So, yes, you can.
Just needs to start again.
Start, Margaret.
Months and months of trying to sort these problems. There's me and a neighbour, we gave up almost 2 weeks of our life to ring people and wait for calls back.
Margaret, if you've got a question, obviously this particular item that you've come for the deputation, Councillor Scott has already answered that. Obviously there's a number of people waiting to come in, so if you've got a question, I'll call you back in for a further question.
Can I just do one more?
If it's a question...
No, this has been ongoing. State of the water quality out of my kitchen tap and bathroom tap.
Councillor Scott.
Yes, Mrs. Coates.
I'm aware you don't know about that.
I know about it.
Well, you didn't.
When I was at your house, you showed me it, and I was assured
They're coming on Friday.
but
They're
actually coming out to deal with that. And I've asked them to check all the blocks because if it's just one flat, all flats need to be checked in that area. But be reassured, and if they don't arrive or anything, they've put that as a high priority to deal with that for you. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Scott, and thank you, Margaret, for attending this evening. Thank you. Before I go to the next item, the Chief Exec would like to say a few words, please.
Members, I don't know about anybody else, but we can't feel our fingers and toes up here. Like anything in the council, nothing is simple. So it seems that the sensor has kicked in and we can't switch it off. So I just want to apologise to everybody and suggest that in the break you put your coats around your knees.
What if we haven't got one? What if we haven't got one? I got one. I know. I got one. Members. Members.
Sorry. Everything is fine.
It was running smoothly until the Chief Exec intervened. Thank you. Are there any questions from the public? Sorry, public petitions. I do apologise. No? Okay. What is it? Is it questions now? Yeah. Public questions, yeah.
My name is Trevor Barker. I'm part of the Colne Valley Pool Saving Point. So I'd like to ask a couple of questions. First question, can I ask Councillor Sokal, as one of the two councillors that sit on the CAL board, how did you and the other councillor vote? Did you vote in favour of the closure?
Can I ask Councillor Sokal to respond, please?
Thank you. Clear here, I think you were not here, you were outside there, because this organization, CAL organization, is independent and charitable status. They have the constitution, but no, we are two members on the CAL. So I might be not happy with that, but we represent the council on there, but we are bound by the charity law there on there. We can't leak out any information or discussion on the call there. So that's why the cabinet member, Councillor Paul Davies, replied to the deputation. Yeah. So, well, I will go back when we have a board meeting. I will raise this question again. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sokal. Do you have a supplementary question?
Well, can I ask a question about that? Because I didn't understand. Are you saying that you're not telling us what you voted? Sorry, I didn't understand that. Is that what you're saying?
Okay, sorry, can you let Councillor Sokal put the earphones on? He'll be able to hear you. Yeah. Do you want to repeat your question?
Yeah, I didn't understand your response. So are you saying you're not going to tell us how you voted?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, right, okay, so the next question then is, can I also ask that any future decisions concerning the sites that we will be fully consulted with the community so the community get to know what's happening, because there was no consultation?
I wasn't approached by I think I got an email from Councillor Leslie Warner. But he was a copy to me. I think email was to Councillor Alsdale and Chief Executive about the meeting there. But I didn't know. I wasn't invited to the meeting. I could have come to the meeting. But I go back to there.
Can I just get Councillor Paul Davies to come in, as well as also the cabinet member as well? So hopefully, between the two of them, hopefully, you'll get an answer to your question. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, in terms of consultation, certainly what we've been feeding back, in fact, we didn't have to feed back to Carl because Alistair Brown already knows this from meetings that he's had with your group and other groups, that working with the community groups going forward is absolutely essential. So Alistair, certainly from what I've seen, has given that assurance. He's made himself very available for meetings and discussions ongoing. In terms of the actual consultation process that Carl want to put in place, that certainly is a decision for Carl. They are a separate organisation. However, we have been very clear and encouraged them to work alongside yourselves as groups going forward. So I think the most important thing at the moment is to keep that contact going during this period, so that hopefully, when the review comes, there can be something that can be done to provide the services that are being closed at the moment. But certainly there's that encouragement. But I will emphasise that is a decision for Carl in terms of any formal consultation. But actually, I think what's going on now is probably more powerful and more helpful for you, because there's quite a close contact, as I understand it, between yourselves at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. No, you can't reply to Councillor. Thank you. Is that two questions? Any other public questions? Could you please advise who the question is to as well, on your name?
Yeah, it's to. My name is Louise Lewis again, and I would like to know, has a decision been made by the council about relocating St Joseph Norton School to Deaton? And the second question is, what equality impact assessment was made when the decision was to not fund the leisure centres, to keep all leisure centres open? Thank you.
There's two questions there you just asked.
Yeah,
so,
I had two questions.
So you got two questions? Yeah. So you asked both of them already, that's fine. So, Cabinet Member, to answer the first question and then... Yeah, do you want to do that, Councillor Kendrick? Thank you.
Thank you. The reason I'm answering this is because I'm the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People's Services. Yeah. The Joseph Norton issue is a long ongoing issue. It is a school for children with social, emotional and mental health needs, some of the most vulnerable young people in the borough. And whilst it isn't a single-sex school, at the moment at Joseph Norton, there are only boys there. If you're a girl and you unfortunately have social, emotional and mental health needs, you have to go out of area, which is the wrong thing, wrong for those young people. And not only that, added to that, it costs several £1 million a year to do that, for us to fund that, but that's not the driver. It's what's right for young people. The site at Joseph Norton School does not lend itself to expanding and building effectively there. And it is actually at one end of Kirklees, and the children that attend there, or could attend there, come from all over Kirklees. So a central site is what's looked for. I am absolutely not aware that an establishment of a school at the site would in any way negatively impact on the sports centre that's there already. That it isn't a one or the other. It's completely separate across the site. And, I would, in my other role as Children and Young People's Cabinet Member, would actively want the sports centre to remain there and be active and effective, So it isn't any sort of conspiracy whatsoever. In fact, until you asked or mentioned it earlier, I was completely surprised that that was even on the cards, or even that anybody had thought about that. That's about all I can say.
Thank you for that, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Paul Davies, do you want to respond to the other part of the question?
Yep, thanks again. In terms of the finance issue, I think I explained earlier on in terms of the finances, the council have never cut off Carl in that respect, and we've provided, in addition to the just over a 2 million core grant, the 11 million extra funds over the last 4 years. But Carl, at this point in the financial year, do have to look at their sustainability within their financial envelope. The council itself is in that position. The council has a very significant deficit at the moment due to very similar issues, energy costs and inflation. And in fact, for the next financial year, an even more significant deficit that we are working on at the moment. So that does not mean, again, that we are just cutting off Carl. We are currently in discussions with Carl. There will be discussions around the financial support for Carl going forward. But certainly at this point, obviously, I'm not able to give you any reassurances in terms of what additional funds we can provide, because we have to look at our whole budget at the moment in line with a whole range of services.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Please.
So you've had your 2 questions.
I thought I had a supplementary to be able to come back on the responses.
No, you've had 2 questions which I've given you, so there is no supplementary question.
Am I not allowed to come back on the responses? Because that's what I was told outside.
No.
Question.
One
question.
I'm asking to come back on their response.
You can ask another question.
Yeah, it's just, I asked the question, has a decision been made on St Joseph Norton's opening then? I don't believe it was answered. I was told about the demographics. I was a former teacher at St Joseph Norton, so I'm aware of how it's run and the setup, but we want to know if a decision has been made, if that school is being built.
Councillor Kendrick.
The decision is that we do need a school that encompasses all the children of Kirklees who need that facility. The site at Deaton has been identified as a potential site. It's much more central for people in Kirklees. At the moment, nothing around the build or a planning application, as far as I'm aware, hasn't gone in. That will be in due course if that's the way we go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, thank you.
Yeah, Basil Richards again. You probably answered my one question I was going to ask, really, because you've obviously indicated that if the school is actually built on the site, you would obviously like there to be some kind of sports facility or activities going on side by side. We've been basically hanging our hats on the words temporary closure, and it was going to be a question, you know, will the council show some kind of commitment if Cal are unable to obviously finance the reopening after March? Will the council have some kind of commitment to support them to keep it open after March? Because again, temporary closure is what we were desperately hanging on to.
Thanks, Basil. It's a double act, so I think I'm going to bring Councillor Paul Davis in for this one.
Yeah, okay. Thanks again. I think I probably partially answered, but I understand you're absolutely looking for a commitment in terms of that. We can't give that full commitment at this stage. All I can say is we are engaging in those discussions. We will be engaging in those discussions going forward in terms of the finances, in terms of our support for Carl, whether it's the core grant or whether there's any additional funding available. But you know, I have to be honest, it's extremely difficult at the moment. We're looking at a whole range of areas and services within the council's budget for this financial year and next financial year. And so I don't want to build up any expectations that we are going to be able to do what we've done in the past. The likelihood is that we can't do what to the same level as we've done in the past with regards to Carl. But we are absolutely engaged with them, and we're absolutely looking at all options that we can to see what we can do to help. Okay.
Do you have a supplementary question, Basil?
I just had the one question. Again, I was hanging on temporary closure.
Okay.
Can that be mine? Sorry. Eugene Andrew. Sorry, stage fright.
It's okay.
Can the council commit to bring in, if not all of the centres, just Deaton back in-house. To be council,
I presume you mean leisure centres?
Leisure centres
Okay, thank you.
to be run in-house.
Okay, Councillor Davis, I believe that's you again.
Sure. Thanks. That's something which the external deputation were asking us as we were coming in as well. I understand that's something you're interested in. At this stage, we're certainly not looking at that in any detail. That's not to say that couldn't be something that would be looked at in the future. But at this point, we're certainly not moving down that avenue because Carl has got to look at how they can make their model sustainable and what we can do working with them to help that. However, I would be silly to say that that is not an option that could be looked at in the future, but I cannot give a commitment to that, and I certainly couldn't give any timescales. And there may never be a need to do that because if the CAL model continues to operate and provide the services that we need, then we may not need to get there. And as I said earlier, hopefully, if government are able to provide extra funds for the leisure centre, then we won't be having this discussion. That would make a massive difference. So I think there's a number of factors going on. But long way of saying, sorry, I certainly can't give that commitment at this stage. Good.
I do have a second question.
You've got supplementary, yeah, thank you.
In the event that the Deaton Centre does not open, could I ask what provisions, funding is going to be provided to the children in that area? Because as we do know, it is a high area of deprivation and there's a lot of poverty and real poverty there. So what would the council do to supplement provision and some sort of support for the local children in that area?
Thank you, Councillor Davis.
Happy to have discussions with you as a group. Under my portfolio, we have the welfare provision as well. So certainly there's some elements of funding within that. So be very happy to set something up and have that discussion. I think we can do that then in a bit more detail, and let's see what we can do to help as well. As I said earlier on, I'm so impressed with the work that you're doing in supporting your community. So I'd be very happy to have that discussion with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. 15 minutes are over for questions. Thank you for all attending this evening. Thank you. Item 8, page 7, half-yearly monitoring and Treasury management activities 22-23, reference from Cabinet. Councillor Paul Davis, again.
Bear with me. Okay. Yep, sorry about this, you're hearing my voice quite a bit. And some members will have seen this paper a few times as well, as it's been previously submitted to Corporate Governance and Audit Committee on the 25th of November and Cabinet on the 21st of December. The report gives assurance that the Council's Treasury management function is being managed prudently and proactively. External investments, including £10 million invested in the local authority's pooled investment fund, averaged £69.7 million during the period at an average rate of 0.66%. Investments have ranged from a peak of £111.1 million in August and a low of £34.7 million in June. The high investment balance was due to the receipt of £25.6 million of council tax energy rebate grant, which I think most members are aware of, and that was distributed over a number of months. But also, along with that, we took advantage of a medium-term local authority loans and arranged a £20 million PWLB loan in August from HM Treasury. Balances were invested in line with the approved Treasury management strategy, as you see in Appendix 1, in instant access accounts and short-term deposits. The Treasury management revenue budget is £26.7 million, and this is covered in more detail in paragraph 2.18 later in this report. And the in-year Treasury management performance is in line with the Treasury management prudential indicators set for the year. And again, you'll see this in one of the appendices, Appendix 4. Some of you will remember that the Treasury management strategy for 2022-23 was approved by Council on the 16th of February 2022. And the investment strategy from that is designed to minimise risk, with investments being made mainly in instant access accounts or short-term deposits with the major British-owned banks and building societies or money market funds. And very importantly, the aspect of diversification is key amongst counterparties. And finally, the additional cash received in August was mainly invested in the Debt Management Office, which is an executive agency of Her Majesty's Treasury. So we'll take members straight to section 6, which is Officers' Recommendations and Reasons, and very straightforwardly ask Council to note the half-year Treasury management performance in 2022-23 as set out in the report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor David. Is that seconded?
Seconded, Mr. Mayor, and reserve the right to reply.
Thank you. Okay, the report is here for information. So I was going to say, sorry, any comments? Quickly to get a break. I'm sure it said no comments. Sorry, Councillor Lawson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep them brief. I know we're ready for a break. Just a comment and a question, really. So I would comment that in the economic context on 2.4, there's no mention of the effects of leaving the EU in that context brief. So without addressing, or at least recognising, the contributory effects of Brexit on the cost of living, on performance of investments, and the effect on our local importers and exporters, we're not viewing all the dots on the radar. We're getting an incomplete picture. So I'd want a bit of an explanation on why that is missing right now. And in terms of council performance of investments, we've just been talking about a prudent approach. It does say in 213 that local authorities, in order to gain better rates of return, the majority of local authorities with higher rates of return have further external investments, creating a more diverse portfolio. Now, I wonder whether, as part of our ongoing Treasury monitoring, we constantly address our risk appetite and whether we are constantly readdressing that as we are going along and where it lies now. Are we in the super prudent mode, or are we looking to actually extend some of our income potential? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're right to reply, Councillor Davis.
Thanks, Councillor Lawson. In terms of Brexit, you're right, we can, and certainly we could open up a debate, I think, in terms of the impact of Brexit, and I'm sure we'd have some interesting views from different sides of this chamber as to what the impacts are. And it is an economic impact. I think what's key in here and what's been highlighted are the significant if you like, issues and immediate issues which have impacted within this period. I think the discussion on Brexit is a broader issue, and it is certainly something which, as I say, we can debate further and will have had an impact. And we've seen recently lots of information about impact on GDP and various other things. So that's clearly why Ukraine is in there. It is not pretending to be, that section, a full economic analysis. It is really a snapshot of some of the key risks at the moment. So that's the reason why. I'm certainly, I think there's no doubt there are some economic impacts around our trading arrangements and various other things with the EU in particular. In terms of the risk appetite, yes, the answer is yes, it is constantly assessed. We, as a Cabinet, have those discussions as to what the risk appetite is. Clearly, you need to have an element of risk, because otherwise we're not able to bring any income in as well. And we take advice certainly from our financial experts, but external to the council as well. But I would say at this point, certainly we are not looking to take a high-risk approach. We certainly don't want to end up as many other councils. You know, we could think of many examples, Thurrock being a good example. But at the same time, we don't want to be so risk-adverse that we're not taking anything forward. And I think one really good example of that, and it is a very significant example, is the continued determination and investment the administration is making in the cultural heart. And that is a good example of risk that we're prepared to take going forward in line with prudential borrowing and within our overall financial constraints as well.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. We will now convene for... I said I need to... Yeah, the report is for information to know earlier on. So thank you for that. We'll now convene for a break. There is. Okay, members, item 9, page 31, committee system proposal, reference from Corporate Governance and Audit Committee. Councillor Hussain.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So this report sets out the recommendations of the Corporate Governance and Audit Committee following their consideration of the report of the Democracy Commission Change of Governance Model. The Democracy Commission undertook a piece of work in relation to the committee system proposal motion submitted to annual council in May.
Councillor Hussain, do you want to just speak up a bit? We can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Get shouting, you're going to have to shout. Project.
Can you hear me now? Yeah? So this report sets out the recommendations of the Corporate Governance and Audit Committee following their consideration of the report.
Can we have quiet, please? We can't hear Councillor Hussain.
Can you hear me now?
I think, can you try the mic next?
Okay.
Yeah, because your mark's a bit funny.
I'm going to...
Worst things have happened in this chamber.
Can we hear me now? Yeah, that's better. Okay. So this report sets out the recommendations of the Corporate Governance and Audit Committee following their consideration of the report of the Democracy Commission Change of Governance Model. The Democracy Commission undertook a piece of work in relation to the committee system proposal motion submitted to the annual council in May 2021. The report sets out the findings in Appendix A. The Corporate Governance and Audit Committee considered the report and proposed recommendations and approved the recommendations with some minor adjustments to the wording of recommendation number 4 and added some recommendations to number 10 for the council's consideration. I'm just going to highlight the recommendations that we've been asked to adopt from the Corporate Governance and Audit Committee. The Council continues to adopt the retention of the current governance model, which is a Cabinet strong leader model, with suggested improvements. The Council recognises the key role of the scrutiny function, including key strategy formation in engaging non-Cabinet members in the decision-making process, which can be further developed through the following suggested enhancements. Improvements to enhance and improve pre-decision scrutiny to include reviewing the current scrutiny panels, clear guidance as far as reasonably practicable in defining pre-decision scrutiny associated timelines, annual training and work programme briefings provided to all members of the Council scrutiny panels, providing clear information to members and officers on the benefits of pre-decision scrutiny, and to ensure there is an understanding of the requirements to engage in early pre-decision scrutiny to enhance good decision making. The Council recognises that good scrutiny and decision-making relies on the provision of transparent, accessible information in a timely manner and supports the development of sharing information to raise awareness, increase understanding of and ensure clarity for members and officers around scrutiny and access to information rules and sharing of information. The Cabinet be requested to increase dialogue on key strategic issues with members, to increase transparency and develop both formal and informal engagement with members, that the consultation be undertaken with group business managers and members to identify any potential barriers preventing some members being appointed to committees and panels, such as timing, frequency, location, format of meetings and any actions appropriately coordinated. The information to be communicated to all members across different roles in relation to engagement with the decision-making process, including access to information, rules, scrutiny, raising a notice of concern, speaking and questioning rights of committees. That the work is considered to explore enhancing training and development for councillors to help understand and carry out their roles. It's also to note and thank Mark Edgehill and the Local Government Association for the advice, report and recommendations which has provided the panel with an independent starting point for the review by the Commission. To note and thank all local authorities and stakeholders who gave their time and shared their experiences with the Commission. And that the Democracy Commission undertake a review of the implementation of these recommendations and report back to the Corporate Governance and Audit Committee by March 2024. And finally, delegate authority to the Head of Governance to scope and implement the recommendations in consultation with the Chair of Democracy Commission and Chair of Overview and Scrutiny. So therefore, those are the outline in terms of the recommendations we've been asked to consider. That's on page 35 and 36 of the report. So I would like to move those recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Hussain. Is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Are there any comments on this matter? Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As Chair of the Democracy Commission, I support these proposals. The work of the Commission was completed on a cross-party basis, which I've got to thank everybody that has been involved. It was focused, it was in-depth, it was an in-depth piece of work. We worked together to complete the work, which has resulted in good recommendations that we can now move forward with. During the process, we engaged and considered and invited a number of views across different organisations, partners, members and officers. We worked together to look at what was best in Kirklees and how it could be improved. Evidence from other local authorities was studied, and we reviewed this and what works well and what was needed to do for improvement in relation to the current governance at Kirklees Council. It was clear from the evidence that we did hear that it was a recurring theme in other local authorities, the importance of culture within each organisation and how the members work together within the structures and the processes. We recommended an increased focus on pre-decision scrutiny, and this featured strongly in our discussions. Overall, I'm supportive of the recommendation, and they're listed on page 35, and I believe that they will help us to work closely together for the benefit of the residents, this council, and enhance the decision-making process in Kirklees.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Reynolds.
I'd like to refer to item 7.10 in the report and the recommended review of the implementation. In asking a question, when will the Democracy Commission undertake its review, and will elected members be invited to comment at that time, please?
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Councillor Cooper. Sorry. Sorry, Councillor Cooper, just 1 second.
If you make a note of them, Kathy, and then...
Oh, sorry, she's making... Sorry. Thank you. Councillor Cooper, continue.
Okay. So, in many ways, we got the report that we were expecting. I think I'm not surprised at the outcome of this. What I guess is disappointing is, in many ways, knowing, in many ways, what the outcome was likely to be, the amount of effort, work, time, and commitment that went into it. I do wonder if we really got the message right. Here's a few thoughts. The very first key message on here says, the driver for change to a committee system was hugely reliant on consensus politics across the council to make it work effectively. Well, that doesn't really get across is the fact that the committee system actually drives consensus politics because it makes oppositional politics less likely, because you've got nowhere to hide. All councillors are involved in the decision making. And because of that, it generates consensus, because there's nowhere to hide, just taking an oppositional view. Culture of the organisation is crucial. Whatever the system, is unlikely to work if culture is poor. For decision making to work effectively, it needs openness and a willingness to work with people collaboratively. So if you've got a really poor culture within your council, the way to address it is to have a leader and cabinet model. Because that's the only way you'll make it work. Is that awful? Is that an awful indictment on the council saying the culture is so poor that we have to have a cabinet and leader model? The committee system can be a slower decision-making process and delay. It was felt to be less agile and responsive. Responses from local authorities were mixed. Not all local authorities agreed with that conclusion. And in fact, one of the things about it is policy formulation is the stage at which people are involved. Not pre-decision, when decisions are practically there to be made. It's the policy formulation stage that councillors are involved to work up and talk about the issues surrounding the decision that you're going to make. And for that reason, it's a much better way of making decisions. It might appear to be longer, but in fact, you're going through the whole process together. And that's why you get it. That's why you get better decisions as a result of that. Opposition for opposition's sake is not possible. And of course, opposition parties, which are quite comfortable with being in opposition and just saying, I just want to know where to fire the arrows, they love a committee system if that's the way they want to operate. My own approach, the way I'd like to be, is in a collaborative approach in terms of dealing with decisions, getting involved, trying to sort things out.
That's why I've put a motion on a renewable energy strategy for the last 3 council meetings. We'll see where we get with that. So, yeah, not the majority of the Commission agreed with these outcomes, and I think the outcomes and the conclusions that have come out as a result of this is to fit the vote that's going to happen today. So I know others will have different views, but it suits the status quo to remain as we are. What I'm disappointed about is the amount of work and effort, which was interesting, to come out with the conclusion that we knew was going to happen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't agree with Councillor Cooper's comments.
Thank goodness.
I don't. Yeah, well, thank goodness. I'm not disappointed in the work and effort that's gone into this, because it's an extremely important decision that's got to be made by the council, and we were right to put the work and effort into it. If we hadn't to put the work and effort in it, you'd be standing up saying you haven't done any work on it, you've just stitched it up or whatever, and this is what we get. We've gone through it. I'd like to thank all the people that have served on the Democracy Commission for the time they've put in. This is the kind of big issue which doesn't enthrall the general public. Most of them couldn't care two hoots what system we use, as long as they get the right answer out at the back end of it. But it is the kind of issue that could gum up this council for years, literally years. And so we should be grateful to the people on the Democracy Commission that have actually taken that away and shouldered the burden. Because I wouldn't have really relished sitting through all these meetings, because they've been very wide-ranging and very time-consuming, as some of you know. One thing I would comment on is that when you make, you did say that it says in the report about the cabinet system being, was it agile and responsive? I wouldn't quite class our current cabinet as agile and responsive, but there is the potential for an agile and responsive cabinet from elsewhere. But I do agree largely with the conclusions, particularly about the transparency of decision making. That is very important. Also, to try and engage members more, about participation of more members, and about the enhancement of our scrutiny function. I think they're all very important things that come out of this report. I have to say, you know, both systems are good systems. Both systems will work in different places. I'm not saying that the committee system is bad per se, and our present system is probably not perfect. But I think on balance, the present system is the one we should retain, and we should go ahead with the things that are down in the recommendations to make sure that we perfect it more. One thing to say, Mr. Mayor, is that it's important that these recommendations are actually enacted swiftly. To my mind, we've got until the annual meeting to put these things into place, because I would like us to, at the annual meeting, all of us, to put our hands up to a new way of working, or a slightly different way of working, to say, yeah, we're going to give that a try, let's put it in place and make sure we all get behind it. That's the administration and the opposition members as well. And I know we've had assurances from Councillor Pandor and from Councillor Smage that they are working on getting that in place. So let's see what happens. So I look forward to the developments, Mr. Mayor, that will come through from this. I do support it. Maybe we could have some more regular updates, perhaps to leading members occasionally, to make sure that we're on with the stepping stones in the process. But as I say, the first one will be the annual meeting. I look forward to a report being brought back then.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lawson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report comes nearly 2 years after the original motion was passed to investigate the move to a new style of committee system. The report details the work undertaken, and we're grateful for to those involved. On page 34 of the report pack, we have the recommendations following the evidence taking and the discussions and debates in the Democracy Commission and Corporate Governance and Audit. But in essence, what we're being asked to vote for tonight is that first recommendation on page 34, isn't it? So that is, the Council continues to adopt the retention of the current model of governance. I'll come to the suggested improvements in a moment, but for now, I'd point out that those improvements could have been in place at any time in the past 2 years. The Council today, as I'm speaking to you now, might have been a very different place and working in a very different way. Back to the first recommendation, though. Let's just reflect for a moment what has happened with the Cabinet and strong leader model over the last 2 years. Never mind before that, and what instigated the original motion, but what's actually happened over the last 2 years in the major decision-making incidents. We had a major issue with housing safety, resulting in significant spending, the effects of which are still with us and caused a lot of anxiety amongst our tenants and residents. We had a stalled and stagnant response to the climate change emergency, losing valuable time that frankly we don't have. We had a reprehensible flip-flop on the Rugby League Museum in the George Hotel. We had the A629 saga and a call-in for the Cooper Bridge decision. And now we have the KDSL multi-million-pound write-offs to contend with. That doesn't even take into account the wallowing Huddersfield blueprint. So we can see there's been a lot of drama over the last 2 years. It's no coincidence that many works of literature and film, and even soaps, are centred around people making poor decisions because of things they'd rather not people know about. There's loads of them on Netflix. Go and check them out. Usually the moral is, if you'd have talked about it, if you'd have sought an opinion, nobody would have got hurt. As for those improvements, back to the beginning, as I said, all good practice, but why weren't we doing them anyway? I fully agree with the strengthening of the pre-decision scrutiny, but warn against it being a simple but small and controllable expansion of those in the know, leaving backbenchers and residents to continue in the dark as they are now. Finally, I look forward to the review that Councillor Paula Davis and Kath Pinnock included in Improvement 10, and how the current model embraces the changes in the outlined report. Because that's going to be the interesting bit. That's going to be the bit that says, how committed are we in this room to these kind of changes that should have already been in place already? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. Councillor Martin Bolt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And it's interesting and a pleasure to follow John with those reflections. Some of the comments that colleagues have already made, I mean, Councillor Cooper talked about the involvement in committee system versus cabinet. Looking around, there's probably only a handful of us that have ever served on the old committee system in Kirklees. There's probably even fewer that actually chaired one of those bodies when it was a shared administration or no overall control, when we were called management boards. Those were democratically fair. On the environment and transportation, Donald worked with me on that one, 2 Labour, 2 Conservative, 2 Liberals. So you couldn't push things through, you had to work by consensus, and it required the chairman of the board to be on top of the brief, particularly on environment and transport, when Labour put forward 2 heavyweights like George Speight and Peter Sykes, who were both former chairman of that service. So it required the chairman. You couldn't fall back on having 8 other members of cabinet or anything. So there were strengths in our old system. Looking at where we are now, we had a peer review not long ago, Mr. Mayor. And I think one of the key points of that was the council should work with its residents rather than do things to them. And I take what David says, that in a lot of cases, the residents are probably ambivalent about the council unless they have to deal with it, and then they get very exercised. But there's nothing in here that I can see where those residents at any point have been asked, based on your experience, you could have done a trawl through people who've attended cabinet, people who've made deputations. What's your experience of working with our current system, and have you any experience, or would like to look at something else? So the question, Mr. Mayor, there is, what would the public want? Looking at our recommendation, and implementation's already been spoken to, we need those definite timelines. It's going to be reviewed next year, but if there isn't a timeline to actually have the implementation in, how can you review something that
the implementation isn't written down. And I would ask the proposer and seconder to take on board what's already been said and put that timeline in that the changes will be brought in for us to consider at annual council meeting. Mr Mayor, the item 6 should concern members in the recommendations because it talks about input in committees. One of the key committees that we as councillors and ward members will have to engage with is one of the planning committees. And Mr Mayor, that is one where we as ward members and representatives of the community are at the greatest disadvantage and restriction. The Constitution allows us to go to Cabinet and other committees and have the same rights of speech as a member of that committee. On a planning committee, and colleagues in Cleckheaton will be facing this with the large one coming up, just as we in Murfield have. Ward members, members of the public and others speak before the developer. The developer is usually the last person to speak to committee, and there have been cases when developers have said things which weren't actually factually correct, Mr Mayor. And as a ward member knowing the area, you don't get a chance to correct that. One developer went to a planning committee and told the committee that they couldn't put a signalised crossing on A644 in Murfield because you can't have a signalised crossing on a 40-mile-an-hour road, forgetting that the report said the speed limit was going to drop to 30 anyway, and ignoring the fact that as many of us come from North Kirklees down the A62 when you come through Bradley, outside the new retail park at Bradley, and coming on past ICI, there are many signalised controls on 40 mile an hour. But we couldn't go back and say, sorry, you've got that wrong, mate. So we are disenfranchised on a key committee, and that's one of the things that does need looking at. So given that, as has been mentioned, this has been 2 years in the genesis, I would have also liked that point 5, talking about investigate and recommendation, would have actually come forward with that investigation done about what are the constraints on members taking part in the democratic process, attending meetings and others. In 2 years, surely, Mr Mayor, we could have asked our 69 colleagues, is there anything that inhibits you from either holding a job and coming to a council or being engaged with it? And we could have had those back, and I hope that those matters, Mr Mayor, will be brought back so they can be addressed at annual council meeting when we're seeking to put people on the very committees that we are acknowledging there are difficulties engaging with. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bolt. Councillor Marchington.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I did enter this. I mean, I was the person who proposed the motion 2 years ago, and we received majority support within council about that. And I did go into it with a bit of fear and trepidation because it did just feel like I felt which way the wind was blowing before we got into that. And I'm always very careful about the amount of time that I use and where I put it. So actually, I was pleasantly surprised by how much I got out of the Democracy Commission. And I would like to thank all the members of the Commission who were open and frank about their views. Everybody was involved with that. I would like to thank particularly, well, I'm not going to say it, I would like to thank the officers who really engaged with it and had some good with that. So, and I did, and I know I'm somebody who enjoys going to meetings, and I was aware of confirmation, but I'm always aware of confirmation bias because I wasn't somebody who says, oh, I'm going in with an open mind. I'm going in to listen and say, I want my view tested. And I felt with the consultations we had with other authorities and with colleagues, my view that the committee system is a better way of doing things was tested. And I was pleasantly surprised by those authorities that have a committee system, how that worked. It wasn't perfect. What I also saw was some fantastic decision-making from authorities across the council. And I think Colin John was right. The first issue, I didn't see clear evidence one way or the other. And I can understand why the majority of colleagues might well vote to keep the status quo. I think I held my view that I think the committee system would do the thing well, better transparency, more engagement, and would lead to better decision making. And Sam Lawton will have that written. That was what I wanted. Is what do you do to improve the quality of decision making within the local authority? I would really like to see better scrutiny taking place in the local authority, particularly pre-decision scrutiny taking place. And there needs to be willingness on behalf of whoever the decision makers are to take on board what's said. I've been very fortunate as chair of the Children's Scrutiny Panel and I talk about, you know, people knowing this, it's no surprise the regard I hold Viv in, and Viv listens. I'm engaged, both Viv and Karen come along to the pre-meet, you know, the setting the agenda and stuff. And we have tried working with the cabinet members and officers to build pre-decision scrutiny into our work. But it's taken me a couple of years to work out exactly how you do that as effectively as possible. And some of the things we've had in the past, there's been a lot of members involved in discussing stuff, and it's been ignored. You know, we had the policy committees. What were they called? Anyway, we used to talk about stuff, and it was just a way of kicking it. You know, Climate Commission, lots of really good work gone on, but it's not been followed through. And the most significant thing for me was about the town centre stuff. So, Cathy, you know, we went visiting town centres. Jackie and I, you know, we spent a lot of time. Officers and councillors, Ken Sims, looked at town centres. We looked at good practice, but there was a failure to link that really good work from scrutiny through to the Huddersfield Blueprint. And if we're going to, you know, those of us who were really keen on decision making, we spend a lot of time, and sometimes we're quite disappointed that our views are not taken on board. And that's the biggest thing I saw. I saw people who were passionate about decision making from a variety across the country. It takes time to do that properly. And I know, you know, and we have to find time to make decisions. There has to be, and also there needs to be engagement. And that's whether you're a decision maker in a majority or you're an opposition member who's looking for, you know, you can ask the political questions, or are you trying to ask a question that's going to challenge and lead things onward? So I think 9 out of the 10 recommendations I would support. I want to see them followed through in terms of the comments. I do want to see it reviewed. There's an opportunity before the annual general meeting to get some better pre-decision scrutiny made. I'm going to leave it, you know, and it's about genuinely engaging and being willingness to open decisions up to challenge, so that it's tested, so those, whether it's residents or councillors, we can make a better decision. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Merchant. Councillor Andrew Pinnock.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I am one of those councillors that Councillor Bolt mentioned who has experience of the committee system. And it's interesting, really. I mean, I was obviously an opposition member at that time, and there were occasions when we didn't like what was going on. And but the system enabled you to take an issue, if necessary, right from the beginning up to full council. There were some things you couldn't do that, but the point was that every member of the council could, at some level, be involved in a decision that was being made. And I think I wish I could remember now what arguments were put forward for the leader and cabinet model. It's funny, my mind seems to be a blank about that. Other than the fact that it was suggested that it would speed up decisions. Now, I'm not sure about that. Because some research has been done comparing the time taken in the different models, and I think the conclusion of that was that it didn't make much difference. But the crucial thing, I think, is involvement. We have a system at the moment in which large amounts of information are provided for the members of the cabinet and nobody else. And I think there's something wrong there because the rest of the people on the council need to be involved in the decision. It's something to do with corporate responsibility, it seems to me, even members from other political groups than the one that's running the council. it's not very satisfactory, and I think that the important thing in these recommendations is what it says about scrutiny. Now, of course, under the previous system, we didn't need scrutiny because things were being scrutinised all the time. They were going through the council. Scrutiny was set up in 2000 to go with the leader and cabinet model, because to try and keep an eye on what the cabinet and leader and cabinet was doing. Now, there is a debate to be had as to whether it is doing that. On the whole, they do a pretty good job, but it could be better. And which is why I think the points made here need to be as strong as possible in providing more scrutiny of the decisions. And this applies not just for people in opposition groups, but I suspect there are members of the Labour group who, on occasions, don't know what's going on. I am sticking my neck out slightly here, but it is possible that there are some things that happen that, because of communication difficulties, and you can define that how you like, they don't get to know at the right time. If anybody wants to have a quiet word with me afterwards, I don't mind. You reckon? Well, possibly. But status quo, no, I don't think so. It needs to change. And I think that one of the things that I can say has resulted from this whole process is that we are talking about it. And let's carry on talking about it and improving the system till we have perfect decisions. There you are.
Thank you, Councillor Pinnock. Councillor Mohan Sokal.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor, I had the experience of committee system from 1989 until the system changed, committee system came to the leader, stronger leader and the cabinet system. I remember those days. Those committees, there were far too many committees on the committee system, yeah? And mainly the chairs were elected by the majority committee, and the smaller group, like Green Group and other, they were struggling to find a member to put on those committees. So mainly decision was made by the party was in power, yeah? I think, and as Mr. Councillor Andrew Pinniger said, there was no scrutiny at that time, yeah? And some decision was made by the majority party in a very quick. I remember, Mr. Mayor, there was an environment committee chaired by he was a councillor, I forgot he was from North. He started the meeting, and the deputy chair of the meeting, he was same party. He proposed, he said, well, let us start the meeting. Let us finish it. And that meeting, he said, chair said, you got the report in front of you? Any comment? No comment made because there were no members from the smaller group on the committee. The meeting finished in 3 minutes. Do we think the committee system is fair? Yeah, in 3 minutes, I still remember, it must be in the recorded somewhere. He was in town hall, this reception room. So, I think the committee system in these days is out of date. And yeah. We don't want the committee system back. Actually, agree with the Democracy Commission. I congratulate them to working hard on to keep the cabinet system and strengthen the scrutiny. I think it will work well, and I'm happy to support the officer recommendation or Democracy Commission recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sokol. Councillor John Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'd like to speak in support of the recommendations, and it's probably not surprising that I am speaking in support of them, given that I had the joyful position of being the one person who sat on both the Democracy Commission and Corporate Governance and Audit, so I saw all of this several times. I entered this piece of work with a very open mind, to be honest, and I ended it with a similar view that actually you could make either model work. I think the evidence that we saw through those sessions, we saw good and bad in both governance models. And as some colleagues have already said, the outtake for me from it, it was very much about the culture, the willingness to be open, the willingness to work collaboratively were the examples of the good experiences that we saw. Councillor Sokol just said he remembers a committee meeting that lasted 3 minutes. We took evidence where one that lasted all day as well, so there are varying matters around this. My view, given that we can make either model work, and we are aware from some of the discussions we had about the amount of work for officers to change a governance model, I wasn't convinced that you should jump and change the model if you haven't first looked at the other recommendations that everybody seems to be supportive of to see if we can improve the current model. So they seem like an easier ask to deliver. Now, it's incumbent on us trusting this lot over here, but it's an easier ask to deliver than changing the governance model completely. So my position was, and I expressed this in the meetings, was I was supportive of recommendation 1 about retaining the existing model, because I think we need to make sure we give the opportunity to improve that model to see if that answers some of the challenges we were facing. And just a few observations. There has been some stuff said this evening. Some members have had quite strong views about this. They were invited to contribute to the sessions, but very few of them did. And in fact, and I'm not going to name names and that sort of stuff, but one member did put in a contribution, a lengthy contribution, most of which was outside the terms of reference of the piece of work we were doing anyway. And they knew that. And when they talk about the committee system making it difficult for there to be opposition politics, it generates consensus, and that model does that. Again, we saw evidence of that, but we also saw evidence where that clearly didn't work. And there was one authority where we had 2 separate meetings where there was the former leader of the council who'd lost control, who wasn't even prepared to be on a call with the new members of the administration, and the first session with a leader who'd lost control, it felt a little bit like a therapy session for him. So I'm sorry, this about it generates consensus. It can when it works well, but it can also not generate consensus. And I think that's it for me, really. Both models can work if there is a will to make them work, and this is down to the people in this room to make them work. I just want to finish by echoing the comments that have been made by a number of people about the work that the officers put in, because we sat through a lot, those of us who were the members of it, but the officers sat through all of that with us and an awful lot more. So, a huge thank you to the officers for the work that they put in bringing this to a. This is not an end. This is a starting point, and I'm assuming that us on the Democracy Commission will have the A or the R for ensuring that there is that follow-through. And as we say, it was at Corporate Governance and Audit that we added recommendation 10 to bring something back, to make sure that something does come back. Yes, it's a year's time, but if you try and bring something back, a report back too quickly, you haven't given a chance for it to see it working in practice. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Pondo.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And firstly, thank you to all the members who took part in the work of the committee system review. And also, Mr Mayor, the officers, the amount of time they put in, we need to actually acknowledge that as well, because without our great officers providing that professional input, we wouldn't have got the report that we've got in front of us. And I'm also pleased that evidence wasn't just brought in from within the council. We actually went out and looked at what others were doing. And you know, some were doing good stuff, some weren't doing that greater job. And I also acknowledge that there was a mixture of both cabinet system and the committee system. So I think that culture thing is really, really important. One of the things I'm just a bit puzzled about is what report were you expecting, Councillor Cooper? Were you expecting a report that had a proposal to say we have a committee system? Because on a committee system, the smaller parties would completely diminish. Would that be good for democracy? I don't think it would, because it would just be the Lib Dems, the Conservatives, and us, and the smaller parties, which I do value the work that others do, would have been completely wiped out. So the independents and the Greens would not have any say. And I think that would be worse for democracy for this organisation. The other point, Mr Mayor, I want to just touch on is the cabinet that is so agile, dynamic and energetic and youthful has achieved. And I'll just go through the thing that we've achieved. Kirklees neighbourhood housing, and Councillor John Lawson quite rightly points out, the arm's length arrangements weren't really working, and that's why bringing K&H back in has given a more grip of the situation, and that's why we are going to address the issue that you mentioned. If we were arm's length, that would have been more difficult to actually address. Climate emergency you mentioned as well. Well, we were the second local authority to declare a climate emergency. And we are also one of the local authorities now are Band B. I've just heard from my learned Councillor Will Simpson. So that's a really good achievement.
Can we have one?
Where we're going.
Can we have one conversation, please? Because Councillor, I can't hear him at all, and I'm sat right opposite him. Please. Thank you.
Yeah. Huddersfield Blueprint, Mr Mayor, £250 million investment, and we are going at pace in delivering that. The Dewsbury Master Plan, £60 million, and thank you to work in partnership with our MP, Mark Eastwood, we've actually managed to secure additional funds, and that's through working with the Cabinet. Town and villages investment, again, that is something that is so powerful that we actually value the work each and every town and village actually has to contribute. We've got a £600 million capital programme. Well, we did. I don't know what's going to happen as we move forward. But that, again, is something that this Cabinet has actually delivered on. Highways, classified roads. Again, that is a massive investment where every single ward is going to get that investment in terms of bringing that highway infrastructure up to a decent standard. Children's services, Mr Mayor, that was in a situation where we were going to be taken into a trust. And through the hard work of Councillor Viv Kendrick, we've actually turned that around completely. And again, that was also done by that culture of this organisation, working in partnership with every single councillor in this room. And that's why we've got there. So there are a lot of softer things that we do that makes this council so great. Pandemic. The 2 years of the pandemic, when I first spoke to the Chief Exec when we hit the pandemic, I'm thinking, God almighty, what else is going to happen? But again, the Outbreak Control Board that we developed, that worked so efficiently, the work with the MPs, and the Cabinet then taking them decisions forward was so powerful that we actually managed to be an exemplar authority in dealing with the pandemic. The cost of living crisis. Now, if we had a committee system, the great work that Councillor Paul Davis has done in terms of proactively responding and putting in place the things to address the issues that we face, we wouldn't have been able to get through that. And finally, Mr Mayor, in terms of the Cabinet is always willing to improve, but what I'm just asking members to be mindful of is the current cost of living crisis. We have got big decisions to make. In a couple of months' time, we will be meeting here to discuss a budget where we have a massive deficit in this year and the next 2 years. And if we try and tinker around too much with the Cabinet system and start looking at structures, we'll miss an opportunity to make sure that we actually have an organisation that goes forward. Because we still have to make sure we will look after the most vulnerable. We still have to make sure that we have an ambition, because without growth, we will not have a good council moving forward. And at the same time, public services, that is why we all came to be elected members. But if there are no public services left, then I'm afraid we'll be missing a trick. Finally, Mr Mayor, you can all trust me. I will be able to help everybody moving forward, and I'll work with everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Pender. Councillor Smage.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I rise to speak as Chair of Overview and Scrutiny, so I will keep my remarks neutral on those last points, Councillor Pando. Okay. I would like to also thank the Democracy Commission. It has been a lot of work. A lot has been said about scrutiny, and there's a lot in these recommendations about scrutiny. And I have thought for a long time that pre-decision scrutiny does, if it's operated in a positive way, gives members more of an input into the decision-making process. I do think there needs to be some clear guidance as to how that works, but it's also about training as well, and I'm pleased that training has been mentioned, because I do think that we need to have more training and development in there for scrutiny. But it's also about recommendations and working with the Cabinet to ensure that scrutiny recommendations are taken forward. And an example of that has just recently when I got stuck on the motorway, parked on the M62 for 3 hours instead of being at the Cabinet meeting, when we had the housing ad hoc, and there was a number of recommendations there that had been accepted, and we look forward to seeing those put into action. But it's also about recommendations from scrutiny as well. Some of us have been doing it a little while, and we do have long memories. Recommendations that were made some years ago on issues can also be current. And it is about looking to see, right, have we looked at this area before, and what were the recommendations then, and can they help the process this time? I'm thinking about a particular area, and I won't go into any detail, but I have asked that the 2015 recommendations be forwarded to officers on that matter, because I think it will help in the process that is happening at the moment, that if those recommendations are considered again. All right. So thank you for the comments on scrutiny, and I look forward to putting in measures, working with the relevant people, and putting in measures ahead for the annual meeting in May. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smage. There's no more questions. We will now go to right to reply, Councillor Hussain.
Is my mic working this time? Yeah? No.
Don't take mine.
Hi? Yeah? Okay, cool. So it was, I think sometimes you can't win in this chamber when you sat here. So yeah, I think the outcome, it wasn't decided. It was very much a thorough process that was undertaken. I have absolutely full confidence in the Democracy and Commission's work. And obviously going out to other local authorities to get that information and thank them for all the hard work that they've actually done. In terms of something that was mentioned earlier on in terms of culture and improving that, and I don't mean to sound condescending when I say this, but there's various ways to improve culture, such as quality of service improvement tools, smart objectives, team building. So it really just does depend on what the issue is, and not necessarily changing an entire model means that you improve the culture itself. And in terms of the recommendations made, especially the pre-decision scrutiny one, I think that's enabling, empowering members, and it's very much a forward-thinking action. while we might have a habit of looking back at certain issues that we've highlighted in this chamber, I'd like us to all look forward. And as Councillor Pandor mentioned and highlighted, we're going to face a lot of challenges moving forward, a lot of difficult decisions to make. So, yeah, once again, thank you for all involved and thank all the members and officers for all the hard work.
Thank you, Councillor Hussain. We'll now go to a vote in terms of show of hands. Those for? Those against? Any abstain? Vote is being carried with 4. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 10, questions to the leader, cabinet members, chairs of committees and nominated spokespersons. A written schedule of submitted questions has been circulated. I will now invite members to ask their questions in turn. The appropriate member will respond. One supplementary question to each submitted question is permitted. Question 1 for Councillor Cooper to Cabinet Member for Region, Councillor Turner. Councillor Cooper.
The government announced in December that local councils will have flexibility to depart from housing targets in changes to be made to the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill. How will Kirklees respond to these proposals, and which greenfield sites that were under threat in Kirklees will now be saved?
Councillor Cooper Turner.
Mr Mayor, I hope you realise how agile I was getting up then. Mr Mayor, Councillor Cooper, thanks for the question. The smart answer will be none. But the detailed answer is, at this moment in time, nothing changes in our local plan. The announcement from the Minister was simply to say he was minded to change the rules and housing targets. At this time, the Government has not changed the housing requirements, planning policies or guidance, and we are therefore required still to make decisions on planning applications in accordance with our local plan. The Government has announced a consultation on changes to the NPPF. This closes in March 2023, and the Government will then respond to the consultation in the spring of 2023, before it decides on the next steps for planning reforms. I'm not convinced that any announcement will be in spring, given the consultation doesn't close until March, and given the usual pace of changes to planning legislation, which moves slightly slower than the average sloth, I don't think I will be holding my breath. It would, however, be very, very helpful for our review of the local plan if any changes in policy sooner rather than later. I do, however, welcome the opportunity to comment on the consultation, and our planners will be drafting responses to the consultation over the coming weeks for the Council to give the Government its views. I would definitely urge individual parties and individual councils to make their own comments in the consultation, which they can supply directly to the Government. This is your chance to tell the Government what you think about the housing targets. I think there's a genuine consensus that the numbers we had to work to at the time of the local plan did not truly reflect the long-term housing needs of Kirklees. So we might have the opportunity to work to more realistic targets at some point in the future. But that's only if we make our thoughts known to them, and perhaps, you never know, they might even listen.
Councillor Cooper, supplementary question.
Yeah, and thanks for the response, and not unexpected. The ministerial statement on the 6th of December did give some pretty strong indications about where government thinking was going in terms of land supply, in terms of the numbers, about more greater local control. So there was, I think, there was several pages of views presented by Michael Gove in that ministerial statement, which would be wrong of us to ignore. I take the point that until it's actually passed at Parliament, that's different, but surely we ought to be planning on the indications that are given by government and working towards those.
If only. If only. Somebody once said, this lady's not returning. We've seen more U-turns from this government since in last year than ever, I think, in the history of politics. So why would we spend a lot of time and effort when things may well change? I'd be very surprised if what the Secretary of State said is what comes out in reality, because he will come under pressure from his own members, he will come under pressure from members of the public, and I'm sure what he said will not be the actual reality of what comes out of the planning legislation. But just remember, more U-turns than enough.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Question 2, question from Councillor Cooper once again to the Cabinet Member for Transport, Councillor Firth.
What are the Council's plans for number 1, Edgerton Road, a property that you have recently acquired?
Councillor Firth.
Thank you, We're not, are we on? Yeah. You forgive me, Mr. Mayor, for being dressed like this. No, it's well known I'm a very sensitive and delicate person. So you'll forgive me for answering my question like this. Thank you for your question. The Council, by the way, has not yet acquired this property, but has contracted to do so. Changes to the boundary in order to facilitate a future transport improvement scheme will be required, and then the intention would be either to resell or let the property. The price process and timescales for doing this are still being considered.
Councillor Cooper, supplementary.
So you are in the process of purchasing a property for a scheme that you've got no funding for, no timescales to deliver, and a scheme which is shelved, I think. I think the term you used is paused, because it's one of the most unpopular schemes, the one at the top of the list for actually pausing. And so you've gone to the cost of buying hundreds, at least £250,000, because that's the level at which that's got to go for a decision, to acquire this property. I think that the sensible thing to do with that property, I would have thought, was to put it into the council's estate and use that to help homeless people in the meantime, and forget these road expansion plans that the council has.
Councillor Firth.
Here we are. I'm still sensitive. I can't press it. The latter part of your supplementary may well come to pass, but to do so, we need to acquire that property. This part of the A629 project is paused, but we have to acquire it because who knows, in the future we may well revisit this project. So until we do that, it is in pause. It's paused now. Funding is not available or likely to be available for, I consider, a very long time. And it would be, I think, in plain speaking, daft not to carry on with acquiring this property.
Thank you, Councillor Firth. Question 3 from Councillor Cooper to the Leader of the Council, Councillor Pando.
Is the £2 million funding allocated to the place partnerships for active travel schemes under threat?
Councillor Pando.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, the cost of living crisis threatens the very fabric of public services and local government. We've got in-year challenges regarding our budget, and in the next couple of years we'll have even more challenges. So I can't give you any assurance that either way what's going to be in, what's going to be out. And as we work through the budget process, I'm sure you will bring your own proposals forward, and when we publish our proposals, hopefully everything will come to light. Thank you.
Councillor Cooper, do you have a supplementary?
A lot of work has gone in by elected members from across the wards on this. Sites, areas have been identified for walking schemes, for helping people get around, cycling schemes that actually are helping people get around during the cost of living crisis at low cost. So for that reason, there's all that effort and work that's gone into that in the faltering as was place partnership process, and we got to that place. Not all areas will have got to that place, but some of us have identified those areas. Do you acknowledge that? And what weight will be given to schemes where they have identified areas which have identified against those that haven't?
Councillor Panda.
Yeah, completely agree. A lot of work has gone into not just the Kirklees active travel part of the budget, but also there's a whole shed load of other services and other things that councillors do. And it worries me that as we move forward, a lot of the good work that we've been doing for many, many years, that is all under threat. Public services, as we know them, are under threat. And it's going to be a difficult balance in terms of what we heard earlier on, the deputations. We've got them challenges in terms of addressing poverty, deprivation. At the same time, we've got to look at our ambition and how we develop our economy and how we put growth back in. And at the same time, protecting the most vulnerable. So it's going to be a difficult decision, Mr. Mayor, whatever we do. Whatever we do, we will have to make savings of around 34 million, cuts of 34 million. And if things don't improve, the year after is even going to be worse. And the year after that, if we have a public service local authority left, it's going to be even more difficult. So we've got to take everything into consideration, and it's going to be difficult. And I completely acknowledge and I completely agree with you that a lot of work has gone in, but there's tons of work that's gone in everywhere, and we are now working through the detail, and we will have to take difficult decisions. But I look forward to your budget amendment in March, as with other groups, and hopefully we can come out more stronger throughout this whole process. But it is worrying, and I completely acknowledge that a lot of work has gone in.
Thank you, Councillor Panda. Question 4 from Councillor Cooper to the Leader of the Council, Councillor Panda.
And I look forward to you agreeing our budget amendment in February. What are the Council's plans to promote the £400 energy rebate to Park End residents?
Councillor Panda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, can I pass this on to Councillor Paul Davies, who actually leads on this portfolio, who will be able to answer?
We can. Thank you, Councillor Panda. Councillor Davies.
Thanks, Councillor Cooper, for the question. Guidance has yet to be issued for the scheme. Our understanding so far is that applications for this rebate will be managed by, and this is a snappy title, I know, the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. So the BEIS, as it's called. They'll also set up a call centre for general inquiries and handle the marketing for the campaign in the main. Local authorities' role, again as we understand it in the scheme, will start once application forms have been completed and identity verified. We will then verify address, payment details, ensure a payment has been made already, and finally make payment and issue a decision letter. So we're at that back end in the logistics. However, we will absolutely promote the campaign through our normal channels, including our web, social media, and clearly through members as well. And we'll absolutely look at any other initiatives to get that message across. It's a very difficult cohort of people to get in touch with, and the team are absolutely committed to working to do this as well. But at the moment, we're still waiting for those final details.
Councillor Cooper, do you have a supplementary? No. Okay. Thank you. Question 5 from Councillor Warner to Cabinet Member for Corporate Services, Councillor Paul Davies. Warner.
Right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I do apologise. I think we might have heard this topic a bit this evening, but there is a really fundamental question that I want to ask. So, The question is, obviously, in the light of what were shock closures of Combe Valley Swimming Pool, Dayton Sports Arena, Batley Baths and Recreation Centre, with less than 2 weeks' notice just before Christmas, which personally I think was quite cruel. Could the Cabinet member responsible inform us when they first knew of this planned closure?
Councillor Davies.
Thanks, Councillor Warner. So, fairly straightforwardly, as a Cabinet and leading members, we were informally notified of Carl's intentions. And I think that's important. It was an informal notification of their intentions to have the temporary closures of these sites a week before Carl notified their staff, customers and ward members. So it was a week before that became public as such.
Councillor Warner, do you have a supplementary question?
Of course. Yeah, thanks, Councillor Davies. So that week, according to the Chief Exec of CAL, councillors in the different wards that were going to be affected were meant to have been informed. We most definitely weren't, and it's no secret that I'm both an active swimmer, I live near the pool, and to hear from our general CAL membership that my beloved pool, which has been my sanity through a year of bereavement, a year of major surgery, was being pulled. Clearly, some of you know I was more than furious. But what I was most furious about was that there was no consultation, collaboration, none of us knew. I sent emails all over the place. Very few people bothered to contact me back, because when you're changing school plans for swimming lessons, somebody on the Cabinet must have known. And one of the things I want to ask from this, in future, you've talked about this earlier, can we please collaborate and communicate together? I've had more emails, messages about this pool than any other thing in the 3.5 years I've been a councillor. And I felt in a really, both personally vulnerable, personally angry, but also I didn't feel I was doing justice to my role as a councillor in my community. When you don't know things, how can you effectively communicate? And unfortunately, the council's come in for a lot of bad publicity over this, regardless of how CAL operates. Communication always is an issue for me in aspects of the council's work.
Councillor Davies.
And I think you heard from me earlier on the deputations, and certainly, absolutely, already, as you know, from the decision becoming public, we've been encouraging Carl to have that direct contact, and I know the Chief Exec has met with you a number of times. We are having those discussions, myself and Councillor Khan, the two portfolio holders, with that overall responsibility, and having weekly briefings with officers on this very issue. So you can be assured that we are very much prioritising this, and we will do everything we can to make sure that collaboration improves.
Question 6. Question from Councillor Warner to Cabinet Member for Corporate Services, Councillor Paul Davies.
Right. Could the Cabinet member please tell us how much money was saved during the 3 months, hopefully temporary closure, of all the above pools and leisure centres?
Councillor Davies.
Thanks. In terms of the operational savings for CAL, they may well be able to provide those to you, I would believe, at the end of this period, when they'll be able to quantify the impact of the closures. That is a decision for CAL. It is the information they hold. And as I said, I know you're in regular contact with the Chief Executive, and I would encourage you to carry on with that contact.
Councillor Warner, do you have a supplementary question?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think there is one of the things that this has clearly shown up, and I want to ask that the council does have a duty of care to citizens. Whatever arrangement came when the leisure was handed over to CAL, my understanding was that there was meant to be some scrutiny, and I don't understand how we've ended up with our recreation in a position where it's millions overspent. We know about the energy crisis and things, but fundamental is a flaw in the structure. it seems to me that CAL has not been properly scrutinised. And I would like to ask that, you know, if it comes to the point where we have to look at in-house, whilst Calderdale is struggling with some aspects, it's recently refurbished its centre in Todmorden, solar panels, heat pumps. We need to think strategically about future ways of bringing something that's really needed for all of our communities. And just lastly, I know this is just meant to be questions, but you know, we are the 5th richest country in the world. What the heck are we doing? Depriving elderly people, children, everyone from swimming? There's something really immoral in what is happening in this country. And I would ask the members to the right of me if they could do the best to lobby anyone in their party, anyone of influence, to look at the funding that's coming to councils at the moment, because quite frankly, it's immoral.
Councillor Davis.
Absolutely agree with your final comments in that regard. And I think earlier on made the comment, you know, certainly I know the lobbying's going on for that extra support for the leisure sector as a whole, not just council-owned properties as such. In terms of the scrutiny, certainly there is scrutiny, and you know we are going through that process of discussions with CAL. We will be going through those processes for next year's financial position, and absolutely, you heard me say earlier on, the council have been committed to supporting CAL through the last 4 years with 11 million additional spend. The fact is, all of the leisure sectors, it's extremely difficult to manage them in a cost-effective way. We have got a significant number of sites.
Members, can I have one conversation, please? I can't hear Councillor Paul Davis answering the question. Thank you.
Certainly, I think through the partnership with CAL, what we have shown, as we show with other partners, is that when they employ staff on good terms and conditions, and there are good staffing levels within their organisation. That is not always the same within the private sector. I'm not criticising the private sector. They have to generate profits. It's a different scenario. So sometimes it's very difficult to compare as well. But there is scrutiny, and absolutely on the financial side, we will be continuing to have those discussions. They will be very tough discussions over the next few months, though.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Question 7, question from Councillor McGuinn to Cabinet Member for Corporate Services, Councillor Paul Davis. Paul, you'll be busy.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. How many computer terminals have been lost in the move from the Central Library in Huddersfield to the Civic Centre?
Councillor Davis.
Session is just to prove that I am agile. I can bob up and down all the time, isn't it? I think that is. Thanks, Councillor McGuinn, for this. Right, in terms of the physical fixed workstations for library use, they've been reduced from 27 to 10. So that happened as a move. In addition to this, we're also looking to enable computers already in the co-located customer service centre to enable them to be used more efficiently and respond to different peaks and troughs within the two services, so to balance out and to try and use those collaboratively, if you like. We're also looking to offer further access to laptops and or tablets for all customers to use within the library alongside the existing digital inclusion loan scheme we have in place. So that's something else we're investigating this time. However, IT usage in Kirklees libraries has not yet recovered to pre-COVID levels, and customers are increasingly using our space to use our free Wi-Fi. So they're tending to bring their own hardware, smartphones, tablets and laptops, rather than the fixed terminals. So that is the current situation.
Your supplementary question, Councillor McGuinn?
Yes, thank you. I did go in the library when it opened on Monday, and I noticed there was a lack of space for people to work in. I counted 10 computer terminals, so I'm agreeing with you there. But as regards other space, it was very limited. There was a large amount of space to sit down in the old library to work, but there is very little room in the Civic Centre. And another point I'd like to make is, it's very cramped, very cramped now. Are you sure that there's going to be enough space for people to work in?
Well, certainly the library staff are doing everything they can. It is a different space, so I'm not going to pretend otherwise. However, what we're also finding is within the customer service centre, there are less people coming in for face-to-face meetings, help. There's a lot more accessing our support through phones and online. So some of that space, they're looking at how we can use that as well. That is work that's going on at the moment. To be fair, I think there's an element of us working through where we are at the moment and seeing if we have to look at other options as well. But the library staff at the moment feel very confident that they can meet the demand and support people as they have been supporting them before. But nobody is going to try and pretend that the space is the same as the main library. Clearly it's not.
Question 8 from Councillor McGuinn to Cabinet Member for Corporate Services, Councillor Paul Davis.
How many books will be lost in the move from the Central Library in Huddersfield to the Civic Centre?
I'm jumping up so much I'm forgetting to press the button. The straightforward answer is no. There are no books lost in overall terms, but I'm sure what you refer to are the books on the shelves, etc. So work has been done to relocate some of the stock to other libraries. The majority of the stock that hasn't moved to the Customer Service Centre is currently in storage at Princess Alexandra Walk, and that's going to be moved to Victoria Lane once that space is ready. The stock rotation system will then start to operate, meaning stock at the Customer Service Centre will, on a regular basis, be refreshed, and all of the stock, including that at Victoria Lane, will be available to customers through the free-of-charge reservation system.
Councillor McGuinn, do you have a supplementary?
Yeah. Is it the intention, when we do have a new central library, to increase the amount of books on display?
Councillor Davis.
I have to say, I couldn't answer that question to you in exact terms. Certainly, we're really excited, and the library staff are extremely excited about the new provision on the new library. But it's something I can get back to you on that. I'll talk to the library team and see what the plans are in terms of the floor space, etc.
I just want to remind members that the questions for this item is 30 minutes. If you want to extend it, and I want to ask you to, you've done your 30 minutes. Do you want to keep going?
If you want
Do you want to go? If you want to carry on. If not, if you want to go, I'm happy to close the minutes. 30 minutes is done.
It's not done. You've got 2 minutes.
You've
got 2 minutes.
Can't close the meeting.
You've got 2 minutes.
If you don't want to...
You've got one more question.
Yeah. Can we...
So who's going to move?
Who's moving? Can I have somebody wants to move for questions?
Continue with the questions until 9 o'clock.
So you're moving, and second, can we go to a vote on that? Looks carried. Looks. For those that don't want it to go, looks carried. Question 9. Question from Councillor McGuinn. Cabinet Member for Corporate Services again, Councillor Paul Davis.
I'm sorry about that. I asked this question as a supplementary last time, and I didn't get. You said you didn't know. So, since the closure of the art gallery, how much work has there been on the roof of the building to repair leaks?
Councillor Davis.
So the Council's technical services team, working with the cultural art consultants, identified, as you're probably aware, a number of repairs that were required in the art gallery roof, and these were carried out during 2022 by a roofing contractor from the council's standing list. The team continues to monitor the building for roof leaks and will address them should they occur. So at the moment, as far as we're aware, they've resolved the leaks within the roof at this point.
Councillor McGinn, do you have a supplementary question? No. Okay, thank you. Councillor Mather.
Hi. I was asked by a resident to dispose of catering-sized nitrous oxide canisters. Can the council give any advice on how to safely dispose of this material?
Councillor Mathers.
You're having a laugh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor McGuinn, you've been working very hard. I'm brain dead. I'm that cold. I've had to put my coat on. So, yes, the answer is yes, and let me give you a fuller response. It is important that canisters are completely emptied of all pasteurised liquid gas before they are disposed of. These items should not be disposed in our household bins, as the compacting process carried out in the back of the refuse collection vehicle may cause the canisters to burst or explode. The canisters can also present a hazard for our sorting methods at our waste disposal facilities. In small quantities arising from households, these items are accepted at our household waste recycling centres via our scrap metal skips, where the canisters can be recycled safely. Our bulky waste collection can also be arranged by selecting special collection items. The method will require prior inspection of the items and will be collected by a non-compacting waste vehicle. Larger commercial quantities are acceptable via our trade waste service again. Again, the items for collection would be subject to prior inspection so that an accurate quotation can be given and the most efficient disposal route identified. Thank you for your question.
Councillor McGuinn, you've got a supplementary question?
Just a supplementary. I did take him down to the waste centre down in Huddersfield, and the guy said there they didn't accept them. So, but he after I insisted, he did take them. Okay. Well, I don't find it laughing matter because I think it's important. So, my observation: can you inform the people who work down there that you can dispose of them there?
Councillor Mathers.
Yes, we did take them, but I will make sure that they're informed so that it's a consistent approach across the district. Thank you.
Question 11 from Councillor McGuinn to Cabinet Member for Corporate Services, Councillor Paul Davies. Again.
Sorry about this, Councillor Davies. A resident contacted me about the lack of a hologram on her new disabled badge. After being reassured there was no problem, I was later informed that the printers had indeed printed the badges wrongly. Can you please tell me how many people have been affected by this mistake?
Councillor Davies.
Thank you. So the blue badges, and you may well be aware of this now because as you probably know, an article had to be corrected in the Examiner. That was unfortunately putting the blame on the council for the printing, but the blue badges are produced nationally on behalf of the Department for Transport by a private company, APS. Kirklees Blue Badge team determine eligibility only. Our Blue Badge team have been in touch with the Department for Transport, who have confirmed during the production of the Blue Badge there was a one-off incident caused by human error. The hologram is actually affixed manually, so they stick it on manually to the badge. On this occasion, it didn't happen. And the Department for Transport and EPS have extended their apologies for this problem. At the time, once we knew, the team cancelled the badge, reissued a new one, and that's going to be delivered fast track as soon as they were aware of what was going on. please, I would absolutely encourage you, Councillor McGuinn, if there is a problem with this, come straight to me. We could probably resolve it a lot quicker. And it is unfortunate that a very negative story originally went into the Examiner, which then had to be corrected over this instance.
Councillor McGuinn, do you have a supplementary question? No. Okay, thank you. Number 12. Question 12 from Councillor Andrew Pinnock to Cabinet Member for Environment, Councillor Mothers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In May 2021, the 300-year-old cross in Oakenshaw was struck by a lorry and seriously damaged. Eventually, it was removed from its original site and moved to safe storage. There is strong local feeling that the cross should be restored to its original location. And could the Cabinet Member please inform me of the progress being made to ensure that this happens?
Councillor Mothers.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Pinnock. The Highway Authority was made aware of the damage and removed the monument, as you say, to a safe storage area following damage by a third party in 2021. The monument currently remains in safe storage until funding is identified and a decision is made with regards to its reinstatement. The Highways Authority was tasked to undertake a review of the road network surrounding the monument, including both technical and on-site assessments to establish if the width layout of the network could facilitate the unrestricted vehicle movements around the monument in its previous location. The assessment concluded that several vehicle types are technically unable to manoeuvre around the monument without leaving the carriageway or hitting the monument. Evidence also exists which demonstrates vehicles are leaving the carriageway, driving on footways and also damaging highways infrastructure, including lighting columns. Therefore, for safety reasons, both of the monument, road users and pedestrians, the Highway Authority is unable to recommend its reinstatement without significant changes to the highway and the introduction of vehicle access restrictions, which would be subject to a TRO. The Highways Authority have provided a series of options for consideration, including relocating the monument subject to a consultation, planning and a discussion with Heritage. Local members and the local MP have details of these options and have been on site to taken to the site to understand the difficulties and witness the damage. At this time, no funding has been assigned to the reinstatement of the monument.
Thank you, Councillor Mothers. Councillor Pinnock, do you have a supplementary question?
Right, thank you very much. Now, this is a bit complicated. There are some things in that statement that I need to question. Yes, local members do know about the issues in relation to the cross and about the different questions that need to be sorted out before a decision is made to as to what to do with it. But I can't say that local members have had a discussion on site about what the issues are. Leaving that on one side, I think I can take that up elsewhere. But I think what I need to ask as a supplementary question is, given the level of public concern that the cross should go back where it came from and where it has been for 300 years, can I have your assurance, please, that the public will be involved in the decision about where the cross is finally restored to? Please.
Councillor Mothers.
Of course, the public will be consulted, But at this time, as I've said, there is no allocation of funding. And if we put it where the public might want it in its original location, it will be damaged again. And not only damage, we are getting vehicles not able to go round, but driving on the footpath and causing a hazard to road safety conditions. So I cannot give you an assurance, apart from the fact when money is available, consultation will take place as to the location of where this monument should go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mothers. Question 13 from Councillor Andrew Pinnock to Cabinet Member for Environment, Councillor Mothers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members will have noticed that this question is related to the last one. At the time that the Oakenshaw Cross was damaged in 2021, evidence as to the identity of the vehicle that did it was obtained. What steps have been taken to recover at least some of the costs of reinstating the cross? And the Cabinet Member has mentioned the question of cost. And what I'm trying to find out is there any way of trying to recover some of that cost? Thank you.
Councillor Mothers.
Microphone.
Okay, thank you. As with Councillor Pinnock, as with all third-party damage to council assets, the council's insurance team do look to recover the costs of repairs where possible, subject to there being sufficient evidence of the damage occurring, statements, photographs, videos, etc. I am currently waiting an update from the team with regards to the damage to Oakenshaw Cross and the cost recovery, and I will let you know as soon as I know.
Councillor Pinnock, do you have a supplementary question? No? Okay. Should we close it? I must take one. Yeah.
You can close it.
I'm going to close the meeting on that question because I'm freezing. He's been getting up and down. I've not even had a chance to get up and down. Anyway, thank you, everybody. Have a lovely evening.